Chapter 863. The Sacred Mountain had already lost enough face today. If he didn't deal with these brats today, the Sacred Mountain and the Sacred Flame would lose all face in the future. That's enough. A few ants. Do you really think fireflies can compete with the moon? Since you want to die, don't blame the Sacred Mountain for being merciless today. The Sacred Flame Elder finally couldn't stand it anymore. His eyes were replaced with cold light. Everyone, be careful. These old bastards probably can't stand it anymore. Stay as close to me as possible. I have a way to leave, but I need someone to buy me some time. Just a little while. But these old bastards won't be easy to deal with. Suchin's expression became more serious. Sensing the ripples in the Sacred Flame Elder's aura, he knew that these old bastards couldn't stand it anymore. He might have a way to leave, but he needed to buy some time. But Suchin knew that delaying the Sacred Flame Elder, Bing Cauldron, and the other experts wasn't something the few of them could do. Today, even if I have to do my best, I'll buy you some time. I'm just worried that my old bones won't be enough. Merciless West said. Suchin's words made him feel that there was a chance. If there was such a chance, he would do his best to help these young people leave. He was just a bag of old bones anyway. But as he looked at the group of Sacred Mountain experts in the air, Merciless West couldn't help but feel powerless. Come. He raised his head and gulped down more wine from his gourd. Then he tossed the gourd to Merciless West and drew his sword, pointing it at the Sacred Mountain experts in the air. His heart was filled with heroic spirit, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. BZZ. As if sensing Su Yi's killing intent, the broken sword suddenly flickered and surged with light. He sensed it and immediately became overjoyed. He had originally hoped to draw out the killing intent in the broken sword, but he didn't expect it to go so smoothly today. He immediately followed the fluctuation of the sword's aura and connected with the broken sword in his hand. Boom! Suddenly, the broken sword shone brightly, and a monstrous sword chi gushed out. Suddenly, a surge of power from the broken sword flowed into Su Yi's body through his arm, causing the aura in Su Yi's body to explode. At this moment, as Su Yi's cultivation base increased, it was as if his body could contain more energy. The feeling of power surging through his body was unprecedented. At the same time, Su Yi once again felt the monstrous killing intent in front of him. As the surging power rushed into his body, Su Yi seemed to see rivers of blood and piles of bones. Come. If I don't die today, sooner or later, I'll step foot on the Sacred Mountain and massacre all of you. Maintaining his last bit of consciousness, Su Yi waved his sword and pointed forward. The vast aura inside his body surged, and his killing intent was shocking. It spread out in all directions, making people's hearts tremble for no reason. What's going on? The aura is getting stronger and stronger, and the killing intent is getting more and more terrifying. Some people noticed the killing intent and aura on Su Yi's body at this moment, and they were surprised. There's an external force in this brat's body, a surge of killing intent. Is it from that broken sword? The Sacred Fire Elder and Ice Cauldron also felt the change in Su Yi's body at this moment. Their eyes immediately fell on the broken sword in Su Yi's hand. That monstrous killing intent couldn't escape their prying eyes. That seemingly unremarkable broken sword was definitely a great treasure. Old thing, in 50 years, no, in 30 years, who will be an ant? Su-chan raised his eyes, and his lightning eyes stared straight at the Sacred Fire Ice Cauldron. His hair suddenly danced wildly, and his temperament completely changed. In an instant, it was as if a fierce god had awakened. His eyes were filled with lightning, and blood chi surged around his body. Seeing this, Yin Lin took a step forward. His scales suddenly opened, and a monstrous red light burst out from within. In an instant, it was incomparably dazzling. It shot straight into the sky, accompanied by a monstrous aura, and a ferocious aura descended. Boom! His aura was terrifying. At this moment, Yin Lin's face was completely covered by black scales. It was as if he had really turned into a beast. His arms were like stone pillars covered in scales. It was strange and terrifying. His eyes flickered with red light, like two blazing suns. He stared at the experts of Sacred Mountain closely. Come. Merciless West's hand seals were formed, and his aura suddenly surged. An ancient aura filled the air in front of him, and an aura that made people's souls tremble also spread out, causing the wind and clouds to surge. Roar! Not far away, the Green Emperor, who had been standing quietly, suddenly changed his expression. His bright green eyes quietly had a hint of blood color, and gradually, 2 blood moons were contained within them. Woo! At the same time, the Green Emperor's body expanded. In a flash of green light, he turned into his original body. His whole body was covered in green scales, and his 4 wings flapped. The sound of his wings was like a bell, and he directly sat above Su Yi's head. His aura was fierce, and his red eyes were terrifying. He stared at the people of Sacred Mountain closely. Oof! Su Xiaoshui flapped his wings. Although his body was small, he had a perfect figure, and for some reason, he exuded an inexplicable majesty. Suddenly, for some reason, the sky around Su Xiaoshui's small body changed color, and thick dark clouds covered the sky. Crackle! Boom! For some reason, lightning flashed in the depths of the void, and thunder rumbled. An invisible force of heaven and earth accompanied it, causing the entire world to be suppressed. Roar! In the thousands of mountains, the savage beasts roared and crawled, and the beasts roared continuously. Originally, everyone was secretly shocked by the aura of Su Yi, Su Chun, and the others. In an instant, their expressions changed drastically. Swish, swish. The experts present immediately looked at Su Xiaoshui. They could all feel that the source of this aura was that little bird. Holy Flame, Ice Cauldron, Gue, Suga, Deputy Palace Master Wanlan, Elder Mei Hoya, Elder Su Yun, Jian Wanyin, and the other experts all looked at Su Xiaoshui. At this moment, Su Xiaoshui's small body was filled with multicolored light, and flames spread out from the depths of the void. In an extremely short period of time, a sea of fire appeared out of thin air. Buzz, buzz! The sound of wind and thunder resounded in the sea of fire, creating a series of clanging sounds and setting off stormy waves. A torrential flame suddenly swept out in all directions, as if it was capable of incinerating all living things. Coo! In an instant, there was a cry that pierced the clouds and cracked the stones. It was as if it had surpassed the ancient times, mysterious and terrifying. Waves of blazing fire spread out, and the waves were turbulent. Mist rose, and the multicolored light was dazzling. In the midst of countless shocked gazes, a bird that was several feet in size emerged from the sea of fire. Chapter 864. Coo! The bird spread its wings and rose into the air. Its body was shrouded in a misty and chaotic light. Its terrifying aura was extremely shocking. 7-colored light filled the air, and there was a domineering aura that seemed to have surpassed the ancient times. ZLO at this moment, the sky suddenly became extremely hot. Countless people felt as if their souls were on fire, and their skin was burning. The bird was only a few feet in size, but it gave people a terrifying feeling that it could connect heaven and earth. Its bright eyes seemed to contain a sea of fire, and there was an illusion of an ancient giant beast in its eyes. It was as if it could look down on heaven and earth and suppress millions of people. Old thing, one day I will tear you apart. The little bird screeched, and its voice was as mighty as thunder. The powerful demon clan mounts in the formation of the various factions were all prostrating themselves on the ground, terrified to the extreme. What a powerful monster aura. What kind of monster beast is this? Could it be, oh my God, is it the divine bird phoenix? Many shocked gazes fell on Su Xiaoshui's body in the sky. When they sensed the majestic body and monster aura, they were all shocked. Could it be the divine bird phoenix? The Holy Fire Elder, Bing Cauldron, Gue, Deputy Palace Master Wanlan, and the Saruga Elder were all shocked. The more they knew, the more they knew what it meant if it was really the divine bird phoenix. What a terrifying aura. This is the Supreme Monster Clan. It is very likely that the real divine bird phoenix has descended. Palace Master Guyue was shocked. The Supreme Monster Clan, the divine bird phoenix. If this was really the divine bird phoenix's cub, it was even more shocking than the appearance of a soul controller with a heavenly soul quality. No matter what, we must capture that bird alive. The Holy Fire Elder's voice immediately fell into the ears of all the Saint Mountain's experts. The shock in Su Chun and Yin Lin's eyes was no less than anyone else's. Under such a terrifying monster aura, Yin Lin was trembling. Is this really the divine bird phoenix's cub? Su Chun clicked his tongue. Only now did he realize how terrifying this little bird was. No wonder he had sensed a terrifying aura from it. Immediately after, a strange hand seal was formed in Su Chen's hands. An invisible wave spread out, and the lightning aura on his body began to surge wildly, like a prairie fire. If there's a chance later, no matter what, we have to find a way to intervene. Even if it causes chaos, it's fine as long as we can help Junior Marshal Uncle leave. In the crowd, Situ Myong gritted his teeth and whispered to Ryugan River, Mu Yao, and the others beside him. His expression was one of maturity that did not match his age. Situ Myong knew that compared to the experts of the Sacred Mountain, the people around him were like throwing eggs at a rock. But as long as there was an opportunity, they could not miss it. The only way is to bring Naren Ryu to the side. There's only one Origin Emperor watching. You guys cover me now. If we suddenly attack, as long as we capture Naren Ryu, the Sacred Mountain will hold back. However, it's very dangerous, and we might not be able to return alive. Mu Yao's voice was transmitted to everyone's ears. Her golden eyes looked behind the experts of the Sacred Mountain. At this moment, the unconscious Naren Ryu was being supported by an Origin Emperor of the Sacred Mountain. If they could capture Naren Ryu, the Sacred Mountain would hold back. Perhaps they could let Su Yi and the others leave safely. However, this method was very risky for them. If it wasn't for Su Yi, we would have died in the Divine Sore Valley. Let's do it. Ryugan River's eyes glowed with dazzling radiance as Origin Chi spread out from his body. Let's do it. Sakura Asaka, Gong Chi, Jin Shi, O Luo, and the others all gathered their Origin Chi and stared behind the experts of the Sacred Mountain. At this moment, there was an Origin Emperor of the Sacred Mountain who was holding the unconscious Naren Ryu in his arms. Don't think too much. With your strength, you're just courting death. When there's an unforeseen event, follow Elder Mei, Elder Duan, and the others back to Shunjian Gate. The Suruga Elder's voice transmitted to Situ Muyang, Mu Yao, Ryugan River, and the others. High above the square, the holy flame seemed to have sensed the strange aura emanating from Su Chen's body. It looked away in shock from Su Xiaoshuai's terrifying body. Murderous intent flickered in its eyes, and a blazing aura gathered around it like lightning. A bunch of ants. Go to hell. Shenghua's face was gloomy as killing intent surged in his eyes. From low above, he suddenly slapped a palm print toward Su Chun. Whoosh! The palm print pressed down and expanded in the wind. The blazing aura, along with the sound of explosions, twisted and burned the void as it enveloped Su Chun. Ah! A horrifying roar came from Su Yi's mouth. At the same time, the dazzling broken sword in Su Yi's hand was filled with killing intent, as if it wanted to destroy everything. It made Su Yi's body tremble, as if it was going to be crushed by the killing intent. Su Yi's crimson eyes were filled with blood-red, killing intent. The hair on his back danced wildly as his body was filled with killing intent. He was like a young god of killing, accompanied by the aura of the Origin Supreme technique in his body. This was a monstrous power that could suppress the 9 heavens. Whoosh! The sound of wind and thunder resounded. The terrifying aura in the broken sword was like a monstrous beast awakening. Su Yi's eyes were filled with crimson light. He held the broken sword tightly and slashed at Elder Shenghua without hesitation. The sword chi filled the sky, and the sword light was dazzling. Wherever the sword light passed, the void trembled. It was filled with killing intent that made people's hearts palpitate. Even Elder Shung was suddenly felt something when he saw this sword. His eyes that were like a sea of fire began to fluctuate. What a terrifying killing intent. Under this kind of killing intent, Palace Master Gyue and Elder Saruga's eyes trembled and their bodies froze. Roar! Boom! Ku! At the same time, Yin Lin jumped out. His eyes were filled with blazing light, and the scales on his body opened. His giant hand, that was like a stone pillar, was strange and terrifying. It was as strong as a dragon's claw and emitted a monstrous crimson light. His demonic aura was impressive as he directly grabbed at Elder Shung's handprint. Merciless West's handprint condensed, and a vast source spirit energy fluctuated between her eyebrows. An ancient aura filled the air in front of her, and the shadow of a flood dragon appeared. Roar! The flood dragon roared as if it had traveled through time and space. It carried a vast killing intent as it charged into the void to resist Elder Shunghua. Chapter 865. Rumble. Several attacks were launched at the Sacred Fire Elder at the same time. Among them, Su Yi's terrifying sword Qi was the most terrifying. It released a monstrous power and transformed into boundless sword Qi. It was accompanied by a terrifying sword Qi that swept out like a torrential flood. It was as if a round of sword Qi covered the void and slashed onto the raging flame palm, causing a dent to appear. At that moment, the Sacred Fire Elder's eyes were filled with shock. Bang, bang, bang. But before Yin Lin could get close, he was shaken by the terrifying aftershocks. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Su Xiaoshuai's billowing flames burned the void. Along with the imposing pressure, it was like a phoenix had descended. But it was still no match for the Sacred Fire Elder. The monstrous flames were destroyed. Finally, the aftershocks reached the Sacred Fire Elder and knocked him to the ground. However, the Holy Flame was also astonished by little handsome Su's terrifying aura. That terrifying aura made his soul tremble, and an unprecedented sense of unease and fear welled up in his heart. Shi Wuqing's attack lasted the longest, but he was also crushed. The shadow of the flood dragon was obliterated by the handprint. The muffled sound was like thunder, and the flames were blazing. The aftermath of the terrifying energy shattered the void and crushed his figure. A dazzling light fluctuation covered Shi Wuqing's body with a layer of armor. His body fell to the ground, causing the ground to shake and the mountains to shake. Su Yi's saber was still bursting with terrifying killing intent. The sword radiance swept out. The killing intent passed through the flaming handprint and reached the Sacred Fire Elder. It could be said that if Su Yi's saber had not blocked the true power of the flaming handprint, Merciless West, Yin Lin, and Su Xiaoshuai would have been sent flying. The Sacred Fire Elder was shocked again. He stared at Su Yi in horror. He was so shocked that he could not be more shocked. What a powerful external force. What a strong, killing intent. The Holy Fire Elder's heart was filled with shock. The broken sword in Su Yi's hand actually possessed such terrifying external power. However, Su Yi's situation was even more dangerous. The sword radiance was gradually burning. Under the terrifying power, he spat out mouthfuls of blood. You overestimate yourself. In the end, it's just an external force. The Holy Flame Elder sneered. Although he was shocked, that brat was just an external force. Su Yi let out a terrifying roar. His aura gushed out violently, and cracks appeared on the surface of his body. Immediately, blood flowed out, and his flesh was badly mangled. He looked like a man made of blood. At this moment, Su Yi ignored all consequences and immersed himself in the monstrous killing intent within the broken sword. His eyes surged with a bloody light, like the waves of a sea of blood. Buzz! At this moment, the mysterious ball of light in Su Yi's mind finally erupted with light. Accompanied by the undulations of the heavenly Yuan demonic soul, it resisted the torrential killing intent within the broken sword. Boom! A terrifying aura that carried an ancient pressure merged with the broken sword. The murderous aura and the destructive aura merged together, forming a terrifying storm that swept across the area. The fading sword light burst out again and suddenly slashed through the fiery handprint. Above the void, the broken sword light and the flames exploded. The low sound of the wind breaking was loud and mighty. The aftermath of the energy poured down from the sky, like balls of fire falling from the sky. It was a terrifying scene. He spat out blood. His body fell from a low altitude in a straight line and crashed into the ground like a rocket. His feet plunged into the cracked ground. Su Yi's body brushed against the ground in a straight line and staggered backward, leaving a deep trench in the ground. Gravel and dust flew in all directions. However, Su Yi did not fall to the ground. His feet brushed against the ground as he stood upright with a broken sword in his hand. His entire body was covered in blood. His body was cracked and blood was flowing everywhere. He raised his bloody eyes and stared at the Holy Flame Elder. Unbelievable. He actually blocked an attack from the Holy Flame Elder. All the cultivators present were stunned. That young man had actually blocked an attack from the Holy Flame Elder. The Holy Flame Elder did not use his full strength. There was no need for him to use his full strength to deal with those few. I never thought that Su Yi would be able to block it. Some cultivators whispered, their eyes filled with shock. The Holy Flame Elder of the Sacred Mountain did not use his full strength. There was no need for him to use his full strength to deal with Su Yi and those few young people. However, the Holy Flame Elder was obviously careless. Su Yi also burst with astonishing strength and blocked the Holy Flame Elder's attack. This boy cannot be used by the Sacred Mountain. He cannot be allowed to live. The Holy Flame Elder trembled. This boy was too terrifying. He could not allow such a future threat to the Sacred Mountain. If he could not be taken, then he could only kill him. Go to hell. Murderous intent flashed in the Holy Flame Elder's eyes. Scorching aura surged around him. In an instant, he threw a punch across the air and blasted at Su Yi. The void trembled. Cracks appeared where the punch passed. The vast power caused the ground to crack continuously. White mist filled the air. The scorching heat made the spectators around the square feel as if their souls were on fire. Su Yi, watch out. Boss, watch out. At this moment, Merciless West, Little Handsome Su, Yin Lin, and the others had just climbed up from the rubble. They looked up and saw the scene in front of them. Su Yi remained motionless. At some point, the broken sword in his right hand had turned into a saber. It was entirely purple and gold. The saber's hilt was engraved with moving stars. The saber's body was inscribed with runes. The saber's blade was like a 1,000-feet-tall wall. When this saber appeared, it was as if a river of stars had fallen around Su Yi. Starlight fluctuated. At this moment, the sky changed color for no reason. Above the vast square, the wind and clouds surged. The mountains and rivers within the thousands of peaks trembled for no reason. Whoosh! Although it seemed slow, it was actually fast. The punch from across the air was like a fiery meteor crashing down. Su Yi also slashed out with his saber. As if he had exhausted the last bit of his strength, Su Yi spat out another mouthful of blood. The cracks on his body became even more bloody. They were so deep that his bones could be seen. However, when this saber slashed out, a powerful aura soared into the sky. Bang, bang, bang. With Su Yi as the center, the ground of the square around him exploded for no reason. A mighty aura surged like waves. It was domineering and majestic. It was as if it could suppress all directions and soared into the sky. At this moment, the surging aura of the Suruga Elder and Palace Master Gyue froze again. Their eyes were filled with shock again. At the same time, many experts from the 5 sects and 3 factions seemed to have sensed something. Their eyes froze, and their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. The saber light swept out as if it had shattered the void. It released a bright light that illuminated the entire world. It was as if a river of stars had fallen from the sky above the surging clouds. Gmax and new chapter end section V\up*C rumble. This saber was accompanied by a wave of divine aura. It was as if it came from ancient times. It was simple and ethereal. It was sacred, domineering, and destructive. When it gathered together, it was mighty and mighty. Chapter 866. Chi, the saber light and the fist seal collided, and an overwhelming flame spread across the sky. Energy ripples spread out like a tornado from the collision between the saber light and the fist seal of the Holy Fire Elder. Bang, bang. Boulders in the mountains were shattered, and the earth shook. Gullies in the square cracked, and everything was destroyed. Buffed. Su Yi's figure continued to stagger back, his sword and saber stabbed into the ground. His hands gripped the sword and saber tightly, causing deep cracks to appear on the ground. Only then did he manage to stabilize his body, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. Everyone was dumbfounded. Apart from the shocking energy explosion, there was only dead silence. Gulp. Then some people gasped and swallowed their saliva. The Holy Fire Elder of the Sacred Mountain was stopped by Su Yi again. How shocking was that? The Holy Fire Elder's figure appeared, and the violent wind behind him dissipated. His expression changed drastically, and his pupils constricted as he stared at the purple gold saber in Su Yi's hand. Boss. Su. Master. One figure after another rushed over. They were Merciless West, Yin Lin, the Green Emperor, and Handsome Su, who were in a terrible state. Roar. The Green Emperor's huge body was also bleeding, and his skin was cracked, but he protected Su Yi in the middle. Could it be? Many concealed auras and gazes fell on the large saber that Su Yi was holding tightly in his hand that was stabbed into the ground. That purple gold saber was surrounded by stars and starlight. It was filled with an ancient and mysterious aura that made people's hearts tremble for no reason. A peerless treasure. The Holy Fire Elder's eyes were burning. He could feel that the purple gold saber was an unimaginable peerless treasure. Chi. Without any hesitation, the Holy Fire Elder's aura surged, and he reached out his hand. Intuition told him that he had to get that peerless treasure. Not good. At this moment, Merciless West, Yin Lin, Little Handsome Su, and the Green Emperor's expressions changed at the same time. They could feel that the Holy Flame's aura had become even more terrifying. It was likely that they would not be able to resist it anymore. Sheng Hua sneered, and the killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed. He extended his hand and bent his fingers slightly. However, right at this moment, Sheng Hua's expression suddenly changed as his aura surged, and he was about to attack. A terrifying energy fluctuation that made even his soul feel uneasy suddenly swept over him. A sliver of shock flashed through Sheng Hua's eyes, which were filled with killing intent, when he sensed the terrifying ripples of energy. He was immediately forced to stop attacking and quickly look at the source of the terrifying ripples of energy. At this moment, everyone could feel the terrifying energy fluctuations. All the experts at the scene immediately turned their gazes in that direction, their eyes twitching fiercely. At a low altitude, the handsome young man in white called Su Chun was wrapped in dazzling electric arcs. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled around him, and cracks appeared on his skin. Blood seeped out from the inside and dyed his white robe red. However, there were also strange electric arcs flashing within his blood. Lightning flashed on his cracked skin. It was as if thunder was rumbling from his 5 viscera, 6 bowels, tendons, bones, and muscles. This is the innate thunder true form. Seeing the body wrapped in lightning, the Holy Fire Elder, Bing Cauldron, the Surga Elder, Elder Gu, a Vice Palace Master Wan Lan, and the other experts' eyes all trembled with shock. At a low altitude, the commotion caused by Su Chan was too great. His blood was covered in lightning, and his entire body was covered in lightning as if it carried the endless pressure of lightning. Su Chen's body was covered in blood, and he was spitting out blood as well. However, the aura inside his body was burning like thunder and fire. It was extremely terrifying. Rumble. Su Chen's body rumbled nonstop. Lightning overflowed from his body and connected with the surrounding lightning. It was extremely dazzling, like fireworks blooming. However, There was a terrifying power in this dazzling light. Thunder might was awe-inspiring. Around Su Chun, the energy of heaven and earth was raging as if it was attracting something. Endless lightning flashed in all directions, and dark clouds covered the sky. The entire world seemed to have turned into a sea of lightning, and the endless aura of lightning covered the sky. It's too terrifying. How can he be so powerful? Everyone was shocked as they looked at the young man. At this moment, it was as if the thunder god had awakened and was activating the power of heaven and earth. The terrifying thunder might filled the air, and lightning intertwined, covering the sky and emitting an unparalleled pressure. No, there's also a terrifying external force inside that kid's body that caused such a terrifying commotion. Holy Fire's face was filled with shock, and his yin and yang twitched unsteadily. His heart was in turmoil. At that moment, the Holy Flame also sensed a terrifying external force inside the young man's body. It was because of this external force that his soul was trembling and he felt uneasy. Quick, let's attack together and kill this kid. Holy Fire couldn't help but shout as his heart and soul trembled. The uneasiness and fear in his heart transformed in a monstrous killing intent. He wanted to deal with this terrifying existence as soon as possible, and he even wanted to attack together with all the experts of Sacred Mountain. So this was the greatest threat. Rumble. All the experts of the Sacred Mountains, including Bing Cauldron, Wang Chuanda, Quang Galan, Ouyang Yuan Feng, and so on, had already sensed the fear and trepidation. They immediately returned to their senses with the Sacred Fire Elder's bellow, and they shot out one after another. Their presences erupted as they directly struck out. Rumble. Everything happened very quickly. One attack after another seemed to overturn the world. In particular, Bing Cauldron and Holy Fire's attacks were the most terrifying. One was cold, and the other was hot. Both attacks seemed to have pierced through the cracks in space, and they were like two long and ruthless vipers, one red and one cold. They charged at Su Chun like lightning. So many experts of Sacred Mountain, including Holy Fire and Bing Cauldron, were working together to deal with a Yuan Zhun realm cultivator. No one knew if this was the last time, but at the very least, it was unlikely that there would be anyone like this in the future. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and fear. That terrifying aura was enough to destroy everything. Su Chun sucked in a breath of cold air. "Old thing, come on," Su Chun shouted. Hazy and enormous lightning phantoms loomed above the void around him. Bolts of lightning shuttled back and forth in the surrounding void, condensing into thunderbolts that suddenly swept towards Holy Fire and Elder Bing Cauldron. Rumble, heaven and earth turned upside down, heaven and earth sank, and the firmament collapsed. Endless lightning and elemental light filled the air. Vast and terrifying energy fluctuations surged, and the void exploded, causing the world to boil and become chaotic. Chapter 867. Thunderclap, Ninth Heaven, open the way. A loud shout came out from the dazzling thunder and lightning, like the thunder of the heavens. Whoosh! As the loud roar came out, the hazy lightning shadow above the void was incomparably dazzling. With a wave of its hand, it seemed to tear the void apart. From above the void, a spatial crack filled with electric arcs spread out, directly appearing in the square below in front of Su E, Merciless West, and the others. Big brother, third brother, fourth brother, fifth brother, let's go. Su Chen's voice came into the ears of Su E and the others. Go quickly. Merciless West took the lead and shouted. Under the signal of his eyes, he immediately rushed into the spatial crack with the others. The Green Emperor's huge body shrank and turned into his human form, following closely behind. Whoosh! Amidst the thunder and lightning, Su Chun spat out a large mouthful of blood. His body immediately jumped into the spatial crack. Bastard, you can't escape. Just as Su Chun rushed into the spatial crack, a red light appeared from the lightning. The fire was crystal clear like magma. Sheng Hu's figure appeared. His old face was extremely pale. With a wave of his hand, he fiercely slapped at the spatial crack. Rumble. Shenghua's palm slapped down, and the spatial crack was immediately shattered. The space seemed to have collapsed, and a terrifying impact burst out, exploding in the void. Bang, bang, bang. Faintly, the sound of explosions could be heard coming from the spatial rift that had been shattered and disappeared. Blood with thunder and lightning floated in the void. It floated in the void without dissipating, but it soon drowned in the void between heaven and earth. Old Shenghua, the day we brothers return will be the day you die. In the depths of the void, such a mighty voice came out, filled with killing intent. It was obviously Su Yi's voice. Rumble. The entire square was still exploding, and everyone's heart and soul trembled. The Suruga elders set up a defense, protecting the people of Shunjian Gate. The surrounding ground directly sunk and exploded, making the surroundings look like a lonely mound in a deep pit. The experts of Yuqian Palace also took to the air and quickly retreated. First, oh my God! Situ Muyang, Jin Shi, Gong Qi, and the others clicked their tongues. Their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This kind of terrifying aura was too terrifying. Everything gradually calmed down. Many experts from the sacred mountain landed on the ground. Their hair was disheveled, and their mouths were stained with blood. Their faces were pale, and there were traces of lightning on their bodies. There were also people who were seriously injured and in a miserable state. Holy Flame, Ice Cauldron, and the other experts hovered in the air, but they were also in a sorry state. Their faces were pale, and their expressions were extremely ugly. Bing Cauldron and the other Sacred Mountain experts were stunned. They found it hard to believe that the brats had managed to escape under their joint efforts, and they had even suffered a great loss. This was simply unbelievable. It was difficult to accept just thinking about it. However, the reality before their eyes allowed them to clearly know that under their joint efforts, those few youngsters had truly escaped and disappeared without a trace. B****starred, hateful little bastards. A heart-wrenching roar rang out from Holy Flame's mouth. It was filled with unparalleled rage and resentment. Holy Flame Elder roared to the sky. His old face was extremely distorted, looking extremely ferocious. He had completely lost his composure and was flustered and exasperated. How could Sheng Hua have thought that with his strength, he would actually let this group of brats escape right under his nose? He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. Whether it was Su Yi, that little bird, or everything on Su Yi, he absolutely could not let them leave today. Even if the Sacred Mountain and Yuqian Palace were to go to war, Holy Flame knew that he could not let Su Yi leave. But now, all of them had escaped, and he and all the experts of the Sacred Mountain had suffered a great loss right under his nose. How could Sheng Hua accept this? One could imagine how he was feeling right now. With a furious roar, Holy Flame spat out a mouthful of old blood for some reason. His face was ghastly pale, and his eyes were extremely gloomy. He then shouted to the experts of the Sacred Mountain, "They may not have escaped far. Inform everyone to find them, quickly." Whoosh whoosh. One by one, the experts of the Sacred Mountain immediately leaped away and disappeared into the sky. Even Holy Flame disappeared soon after. The entire place was dumbfounded. All the onlookers present were still somewhat unable to recover from a shock. The vast square had been completely destroyed at this moment. Like a dried-up lake, a terrifying huge hole had appeared in its place. The deep hole was densely covered with ravines and cracks everywhere. There was only a lonely little mound in the middle. It was the protection of the Suruga Elder of Shunjian Gate, covering the people of Shunjian Gate. All the onlookers shuddered, and the hearts and souls of the heroes trembled. Even the experts of the 5 sects, 3 factions, and other major forces felt their bodies turn cold at this moment. They felt their hair stand on end. Cuckoo! After a long time, the sound of inhaling cold air and swallowing of saliva intertwined in the thousands of peaks that had been shaken to the point where cracks had appeared. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the spatial cracks that had disappeared in the sky. They could not help but feel their hearts throbbing. The figures of those few young people were completely imprinted in the minds of everyone present, imprinted in the depths of their souls. Those few young people, especially the three brothers, had swept through the crowd and made it to the top 8 of the Sacred Martial Arts Conference. 2 of them had even made it to the top 4 of the Sacred Fire Conference. That evil and arrogant young man was even more so. He swept through all 8 directions, unyielding in battle, lofty and lofty. During the battle, he broke through to the Yuanjun realm and defeated the Saint Child Nalan Ruyu with his peerless talent. What kind of peerless talent was that? What was even more frightening was that the young man had even been able to withstand 2 attacks from the Holy Flame Elder in the end. He had vividly displayed the terror that made everyone's hair stand on end. Under the suppression of the experts of the Holy Mountain, those few young people stood proudly and drank in big mouthfuls of wine. Their heroism reached the clouds, and they became sworn brothers on the spot. That kind of carefree and arrogant heroism was probably unprecedented in the past and would never be replicated in the future. It made people's hearts surge, and they would never forget it, and their souls would tremble. It's too scary. If they don't die, I'm afraid they will sweep through everything within 100 years. The experts of the 5 sects, 3 factions, and other forces felt their hair stand on end. Those few young people, especially Su Chun, and that terrifying little bird that was very likely to be the baby of the divine bird phoenix, would not take long. With their talent, 100 years would be enough for them to sweep through the entire Central Plains and look down on the world. Chapter 868. I'm afraid the Central region is going to be in turmoil. An expert whispered to himself. So many shocking changes had occurred in the Sacred Martial Assembly this time. He was afraid that the entire Central Continent would be in a perilous situation this time. Among the countless onlookers, there was a figure whose aura fluctuated and left quietly. Elder May, Elder Duan, you are in charge of the remaining matters of the Sacred Martial Assembly. I have to leave for a while. The entire square had turned into a deep pit. On the lonely mound in the middle, the protective light shield had disappeared. Elder Suga spoke to Elder Mei Huaya and Elder Dawn Yurong beside him, and then he disappeared into the sky. You guys follow me. The rest of you will deal with the matters of the Sacred Martial Assembly. Elder Gyue also spoke a few words to the experts of the Imperial Palace beside him. His face turned serious, and then he hurriedly flew away with many experts of the Imperial Palace. They really left. I'm afraid they will come back one day. Far away from the square, Feng Qingnong, Xiao Xijun, Lin Fan, Chen Yinhuan, Li Qingwei, and the other geniuses had already retreated far away. However, on their extraordinary young faces, there were still ripples in their eyes. Those few young people had escaped under the eyes of the experts of the Sacred Mountain. How powerful and terrifying were they? Sooner or later, they would come back. At that time, who knew how powerful those few terrifying fellows would be? At dusk, the afterimages were like blood, spreading across the sky. In the air, there was a terrifying aura that could not be dispersed. The remaining pressure made people's hair stand on end. The Sacred Martial Assembly had started in the morning, and with the addition of a shocking change, it was already dusk. At this moment, the Sacred Martial Assembly had completely come to an end. In the mountains and peaks, countless people had an inexplicable feeling of reluctance to leave. Every scene was deeply imprinted in the depths of their souls. In this Sacred Martial Assembly, there were waves of reversals. It was too much for the eyes to take in, and their blood was boiling. The King of Heaven's Prides, Overlord Su Yi. In the crowd, someone whispered. The King of Heaven's Prides in this Sacred Martial Assembly was the most shocking. After a long time, the crowd surged and the onlookers finally dispersed. However, each and every one of them still felt weak all over. Su Yi's name was spread across the entire Middle Continent like a storm. Su Yi's name was known throughout the world after this battle. At the same time, The names of Su Chun, Yin Lin, Li Qingwei, and Lord Shaoxi spread throughout the central continent. But in comparison, the names of Li Qingwei and Lord Shaoxi couldn't compare to Su Yi. They couldn't even compete with the names of Su Chun and Yin Lin. Bang, bang, bang. Lightning flashed, and a deep crack appeared in the depths of the void. Suddenly, from the outside to the inside, the void trembled. The entire void crack seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Not good. Everyone gathered together. The spatial crack is about to collapse. Su Chen's voice rang in everyone's ears. Inside the spatial rift, the already weakened and heavily injured figures instinctively gathered together. Su Yi spat out a mouthful of blood and pulled little handsome Su into his arms. Bang, bang. A spatial crack exploded behind the crowd. Lightning flashed, accompanied by a terrifying spatial storm that swept across the area. Walala, around the spatial crack, tiny spatial cracks constantly spread out, accompanied by the collapse of the spatial power, wanting to destroy everything. Be careful. Su Yi and the others were surrounded by spatial cracks. Su Chen shouted and vomited blood. Su Yi, Merciless West, Green Emperor, and the others wanted to avoid it, but they were all imprisoned by the vast power of space in the spatial crack. They were completely powerless and could only use the last of their strength to defend themselves. Rumble, the spatial crack completely collapsed and swept in from all directions. It kept exploding and devouring everything. If someone was devoured by it, there would be no chance of survival. Quick, go to the front. Su Yi shouted. Inside the spatial crack, a tiny spatial crack appeared. It was filled with light. It was a chance of survival. Under the instinct to survive, Su Yi's body suddenly surged with an extraordinary power. Using the last of his strength, he rushed into the tiny spatial crack in front of him. Merciless West and Green Emperor followed behind, but Yin Lin and Su Chun were slightly slower. They were separated by the spatial crack and disappeared. From the corner of his eyes, Su Yi seemed to see the same tiny spatial crack appear in front of Su Chun and Yin Lin. Second brother, third brother. Su Yi shouted, but his body was beyond his control. A terrifying spatial power surged forth, and the last bit of strength in his body was exhausted. Before he lost consciousness, he withdrew the heavenly star shocking soul in his hand. Immediately, his vision turned black. A huge impact swept over, as if he had entered the heart of storm. His soul also lost consciousness, and he lost consciousness. The night was as cold as water, but the central continent city was still brightly lit and bustling. Everyone was talking about the sacred martial assembly during the day. The onlookers who had witnessed it with their own eyes still had a lingering fear. It was hard for them to recover from shock. Su Yi is too strong. He broke through to the Yuanjun realm in the battle and defeated Naren Ruyu with only the first layer of Yuanjun realm. He is a peerless talent. He is also a legendary soul controller with a heaven-rank soul. That kind of soul is too terrifying. The aura on his body is also terrifying. It is a monstrous talent that can make thousands of beasts bow down and worship him. Yin Lin is only a half-beast, but he is so powerful and entered the top 8. Su Chun is even more terrifying. It is said that he has the legendary innate thunder embryo true body. My God, the innate thunder embryo true body. It is said that it is a terrifying talent that is 1 in 10,000. It is the dream of all thunder attribute warriors. Rumor has it that a martial artist with the innate thunder embryo true body can achieve twice the results with half the effort when cultivating the thunder attribute. Being able to nurture the thunder attribute in their bodies is enough to sweep away their peers. And that bird, rumor has it that it might be the young of the divine bird phoenix. A young phoenix? How is that possible? Didn't the phoenix disappear a long time ago? That's the supreme being of the demonic race. There's also Merciless West, the Yama King. He's also a terrifying guy. He's not to be trifled with. 4 men and 1 bird became sworn brothers during the great battle. Seeing 5 terrifying fellows with my own eyes makes my heart surge. They've escaped, but they'll come back one day. All of Central Continent City, both inside and outside, were discussing this shocking, unforeseen event. Sacred Mountain is too strong. Su Chun, and the others were lucky enough to escape, but they're still too young and weak. It's impossible for them to truly compare to Sacred Mountain. For thousands of years, the Xinjiang Gate, the Heavenly Profound sect, the Beast Emperor sect, and the other 5 sects and 3 factions all had deep foundations, but they still couldn't shake the Holy Mountain's position. Chapter 869. Although Su, Yi, and the others had managed to escape from the Sacred Mountain's experts today, that was an accident and luck. It was impossible for them to compete with the Sacred Mountain's experts. Xinjiang Gate and the other 5 sects and 3 factions had thousands of years of heritage, but even they couldn't shake the Sacred Mountain's position, let alone a few youngsters. Over the past thousands of years, the 5 sects and 3 factions have produced many stunning geniuses, but in the end, the Sacred Mountain was still the Sacred Mountain, unshakable. Many people tacitly agreed. Although Su, Yi, and the others were heaven-defying, the Sacred Mountain was still the Sacred Mountain. This is different. Su, Yi, Su Chun, and the others are too strong. They have peerless talent. Even Naren Ryu was defeated, and defeated so miserably. In front of the Sacred Flame Elder, they all left safely. Not to mention, they might even have the Divine Bird's young with them. There were also a few people who felt that Su, Yi, and the others had a chance. Given time, they would definitely be able to make a comeback. Too many miracles had happened this time, and they firmly believed that it wouldn't be long before Su, Yi, and the others returned to deal with the Sacred Mountain. It's hard to say for sure. I heard that Su, Yi, Su Chun, and the others couldn't have escaped far. The Sacred Mountain's experts are searching in all directions. They are seriously injured, and if they fall into the Sacred Mountain's hands, everything will be over. Some people whispered, afraid that the walls had ears and it would cause trouble. The Sacred Mountain's experts were also searching for Su, Yi, and the others. If they fell into the Sacred Mountain's hands, it would be difficult for them to escape. Amidst the clamor of discussion, many outstanding Heaven's prides had their nicknames spread. Among them, Su, Yi, Su Chun, Yin Lin, and the others are the most famous. At this moment, Su Yi didn't know that he had already gained a name in the Central Continent. At night, the bright moon hung high in the sky, illuminating Central Continent City. In the City Lord's mansion, Wang Chuanda, Quangalan, Ouyang Yuanfeng, and a few others were sitting in a side hall, their faces gloomy and ugly. I really didn't expect that kid to escape. Hateful. Quang Guilan's face was gloomy and ugly, her fists clenched. The stronger Su Yi was, the smaller her chances of revenge in the future. So how could she not be angry? Those people will be a disaster for the Sacred Mountain. Although they managed to escape, they were heavily injured by the Sacred Flame Elder, and the spatial channel collapsed. As long as they didn't die in the channel to escape, they shouldn't be able to escape. I hope the Sacred Mountain's experts can find them. Ouyang Yuanfeng said. Damn it. Unfortunately, the heavens aren't helping me. Wang Chuanda thought to himself. His gaze was gloomy as he secretly clenched his fists. What he had seen today had allowed him to completely determine what kind of opportunity he had lost back then. Wang Chuanda had seen way too many treasures on Su Yi's body. It had only been a short period of time, and Su Yi's cultivation base had already reached such a level. It must have been due to the help of those treasures. If he had been a little more careful back then, all those treasures would have belonged to him. That lad wouldn't have survived till now. Thinking of Su Yi, Wang Chuanda's heart palpitated with uneasiness. That kid is too scary. If he doesn't die, he will never let him go. After an unknown period of time, when Su Yi gradually regained consciousness, a familiar voice entered his ears. Boss, are you awake? You're finally awake. The familiar voice was young and seemed to be very happy, chirping in his ears. Su Yi's eyes trembled, and he gradually opened them. What entered his eyes was a small, colorful bird. It was handsome Su. I'm still alive. Instinctively, Su Yi knew that he was still alive. At this moment, he should be lying on the ground. In his eyes, apart from handsome Sue's figure, there was the endless green sky. There were no clouds for thousands of miles, and there was the sound of waves crashing in his ears. It was as if he was on a beach. Ah! Immediately, Sue-Yi could not help but let out a soft hum of acknowledgement. As he woke up, Sue-Yi felt waves of pain coming from the inside out. It was as if his whole body was about to fall apart. His soul was dizzy, and there was no trace of strength in his body. His great void spirit C was also exhausted, and he could not move his body. "Boss, it's good that you're okay. It's good that you're okay." Seeing that Sue-Yi had woken up, handsome Sue was very excited. His nervous and dignified eyes heaved a sigh of relief. Square root, after a full 2 hours, Sue-Yi's body recovered a trace of strength, and there was only a trace of vitality in the exhausted Great Void Spirit Sea. With the help of this weak, primordial chi, Sue-Yi slowly operated the Primordial Origin Supreme technique and adjusted his breathing. At this moment, Sue-Yi also felt that his internal organs, bones, and muscles were all seriously injured. With this degree of injury, if it was someone of the same cultivation level, 10 times would not be enough to kill him. However, he was fine. Sue-Yi knew that it was because of the Origin Demon Body and various other body forging techniques. If it was not for his strong physical body, he would have been finished long ago. At this moment, the Great Void Spirit Sea in Sue-Yi's body also played an extremely abnormal role. Vitality gushed out from the surroundings, and along with the operation of the Origin Supreme technique, the exhausted Great Void Spirit Sea made a slight trembling sound. After an hour, there was already a lot of vitality in the Great Void Spirit Sea. Sue-Yi operated his technique, and the vitality spread from the Great Void Spirit Sea to the meridians in his body. It flowed into his limbs and bones, and suddenly there was an unbearable pain and numbness in his body. The cells, bones, muscles, and meridians in his body were like dry and hard sponges, and suddenly there was an endless stream of vitality. This also proved that Sue-Yi had truly exhausted himself to the point of being completely drained. He no longer had any strength left. His entire body was like a dried-up well, completely dried up and cracked. Under the nourishment of this vitality, Sue-Yi's body gradually recovered a bit of strength, and he could barely sit up. As Sue-Yi half sat up, he could not help but groan, as if the bones in his body were about to be broken at any time. Sue-Yi only then saw his body. His clothes were so tattered that it was almost impossible to cover his body. His body was close to Chilyuo's, and there were obvious wounds and cracks on his body. However, they were not as scary as before, and most of them had healed, leaving only traces. The blood flowing out of Sue-Yi's body had also scabbed. It seemed that when he was unconscious, his body was self-healing under the effect of the body of Diamond. However, the current state of Sue-Yi's body was still somewhat terrifying. "Boss, how are you now?" Su Xiaoshui flapped his wings in front of Sue-Yi and looked at Sue-Yi nervously. "I'm fine. Where are Big Brother and the others?" Chapter 870. I only found Big Brother and Green Emperor. They fell into the sea. I pulled them up, but they haven't woken up yet, Su Shui replied. He looked to the side and said to Su, "But don't worry, Big Brother and Green Emperor are still alive. It's just that their injuries are too serious and they haven't woken up yet." Then, Sue-Yi confirmed that there was no sign of second brother Su-Chun and the 3 Yanlin brothers. Su Shui had already searched the area, but found nothing. Only Big Brother, Merciless West, and Green Emperor were lying on the ground. Their bodies were covered in blood, and they looked miserable. Sue-Yi frowned. His heart was heavy, and his expression was grave. "Big Brother, don't worry too much. We survived, so second brother and third brother should be fine." Su Shui comforted Sue-Yi. His small eyes were also very serious. He had already become sworn brothers with Su-Chun and Yanlin. He was also worried about Su-Chun and Yanlin. "I hope they're fine," Sue-Yi muttered. For now, all he could do was pray for Su-Chun and Yanlin. He remembered that at the last moment, a small spatial crack had appeared in front of them. He could vaguely see the 2 of them entering the spatial crack. He, Su Shuai, Green Emperor, and Merciless West were fine. He hoped that they would be fine too. Then, he looked around. He was on a small mountain-like island surrounded by the vast sea. It was hazy in the distance. The sea and sky were the same color, and he couldn't see the end. He stood up to check on Merciless West and Green Emperor. He found that the Green Emperor and Merciless West conditions were similar to what Su Shuai had said. They were just too seriously injured and hadn't woken up yet. This made Su even more astonished by Little Handsome Su. They were all severely injured, but Little Handsome Su looked as if nothing had happened to him. That was scary. The vast sea was desolate and uninhabited. The sea and sky were of the same color, vast and boundless. Although he didn't know where he was or how he ended up here, this wasn't the biggest problem for Su right now. The most important thing right now was to recover from his injuries. Summoning the mysterious dimension, Su led Handsome Su, Merciless West, and Green Emperor into it. Boss, this place seems to have changed again. As soon as he entered the mysterious space, Handsome Su was very excited. He was also a little surprised, but then the corners of his mouth lifted into a smile. At this moment, the mysterious space was clearly much larger than before. More importantly, it was filled with the energy of heaven and earth. It was as if the air was filled with energy. The spiritual liquid pool in the middle was filled with spiritual liquid once more, giving off a multicolored glow. He wasn't surprised by this change. It was related to his recent breakthroughs. Every time he made a breakthrough, the mysterious space would change. What's wrong with you guys? The blood jasper spirit ginseng appeared, and a medicinal fragrance assailed their nostrils. Looking at the unconscious Merciless West, and Green Emperor, it was very surprised. Gulp! Seeing the blood jasper spirit ginseng, Handsome Su couldn't help but gulp. The blood jasper spirit ginseng was so frightened that it subconsciously moved away from Handsome Su. Grandpa Ginseng, I'm afraid we'll really have to trouble you this time. We need spirit items to heal. He smiled bitterly. His injuries were too serious this time. If he wanted to recover quickly, he would need the help of spirit items. Okay. Looking at Su Yi's dispirited and miserable appearance, the blood jasper spirit ginseng knew what was going on. It didn't refuse and directly cut off a bunch of its spirit whiskers and gave them to Su Yi. Thank you, Grandpa Ginseng. Su Yi didn't stand on ceremony. His injuries this time were more serious than the previous ones. His foundation was damaged, and he was afraid that there would be repercussions in the future. He had to find a way to completely recover. Under Little Handsome Su's drooling gaze, Su Yi also gave Little Handsome Su quite a few spirit whiskers. Little Handsome Su looked fine, but Su Yi guessed that the little guy's injuries were just as serious. This time, all of them had escaped death by the skin of their teeth. Su Yi crushed the spirit whiskers and poured some into Merciless West and Green Emperor's mouths. Then, Su Yi also poured some of the spirit liquid from the spirit pool into Merciless West and Green Emperor's mouths. Only then did he feel relieved. In this mysterious space, Su Yi estimated that Merciless West and Green Emperor would be able to wake up soon. With the blood jasper spirit ginseng spirit whiskers and the spirit liquid in this space, they would be able to recover quickly. Boss, I'm also seriously injured. Can I drink some spirit liquid? Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on. Looking at the spirit liquid in the spirit pool, Handsome Su flapped his wings and pretended to be weak. However, he was almost drooling. You drink some too, but don't drink too much. Su rolled his eyes at Handsome Su, who was staring at the spirit liquid. Goo. With Su Yi's words, how could Handsome Su refuse? He immediately jumped into the spirit pool and drank in big mouthfuls. This time, Su Yi wasn't stingy. He knew that Handsome Su wasn't pretending. Handsome Su was indeed seriously injured. After changing into his tattered robe, Su Yi simply tidied up and let Handsome Su heal in the mysterious space. Then, he let the blood jasper spirit watch over the Green Emperor and Merciless West. Then, he left the mysterious space. Healing in the mysterious space was twice the result with half the effort. However, this isolated island wasn't safe. It was surrounded by sand, and there was nothing but giant reefs. It was completely bare, and he didn't know where this place was. He didn't want to expose the mysterious space. He was afraid that experts would pass by. Moreover, he didn't need to think to know that the people from the Holy Mountain wouldn't give up. If this place was far away from Zhongzhou City, it would be fine. If this place was close to Zhongzhou City, the people from the Holy Mountain might catch up quickly. Therefore, he had to recover as soon as possible and then find a way to leave this place. He found a gap between the giant reefs that was just big enough for one person to fit in. He sat down cross-legged and took out the spirit whiskers of the blood jade spirit ginseng. He gnawed on it like a radish and swallowed it along with the spirit liquid. At this moment, if someone saw swallowing the blood jasper spirit ginseng's whiskers and the priceless spirit liquid, they would definitely be envious and jealous. This was simply a waste. However, he didn't care about this. Moreover, with the Origin Supreme technique, he could directly refine all the benefits of heaven and earth to the greatest extent. Voila! After swallowing the spirit whiskers and spirit liquid, they immediately turned into waves of energy that spread throughout his body. Sui began to operate the Origin Supreme technique and began to refine them. After a while, Sui's body was surrounded by a red light like a red mist. The light rippled and fluctuated with an ancient and majestic aura. King of Heaven's Pride, Overlord Sui, Peerless Wind and Thunder, Void Dust, Half-Beast Battle King Yin Lin, Beast King Young Master, Fairy Qing Yun Li Qingwei. Many other names resounded from Zhongzhou City and spread throughout the entire continent. Chapter 871. As time passed, such a large number of names spread out like a storm, shocking everyone. The Saint of the Sacred Mountain had been defeated, which shocked all the major forces. Barbarian City was located in a remote area, and news was blocked. With the defeat of the great enemy, Barbarian City gradually regained its former peace. However, all the citizens of Barbarian City knew that Barbarian City was no longer the same as before. This was because Barbarian City not only had the Saintess of the Sacred Mountain, Lu Ruoxi, but also Sui, that terrifying guy. Although Sui's whereabouts were still unknown, the shocking battle was still vivid in the minds of all the citizens of Barbarian City. They also believed that Sui was definitely still alive. After all, Sui came back alive from the barbaric demon forest. The Sacred Mountain sent news that Sui was dead, but Sui came back. Therefore, a tough guy like Sui would definitely not die so easily. Suddenly, one morning, when the sun rose, some people were surprised to find that the entire Sui family was empty without a sound. The Sui clan is gone. This news spread like a bomb throughout the entire Barbarian City. Soon, someone confirmed that the direct descendants of the Sui clan, one of the 5 major clans in Barbarian City, had all disappeared as if they had disappeared into thin air. No one knew where the Sui family had gone. It was as if the Sui family had disappeared overnight. Even the collateral members of the Sui family had no idea what had happened. The news alarmed the city lord and the other clans. For a time, the entire Barbarian City was in a state of panic. 3 days later, a mighty aura surged above Barbarian City. It was as if the bright moon and the stars had descended. Experts from the Sacred Mountain had arrived. Where the Sui clan? The first thing the experts from the Sacred Mountain wanted to do was to look for the Sui clan. However, in the end, they found nothing. They searched the entire Barbarian City and found no one from the Sui clan. It seemed that there were people from the Lu clan and Lu Ruoxi's position in the Sacred Mountain. The experts from the Sacred Mountain only looked gloomy. They did not make things difficult for Barbarian City and left in a hurry. They did not even stay in the Lu clan. The disappearance of the Sui clan must be related to the Sacred Mountain. The leaders of the major clans gathered together. At least now they knew that the disappearance of the Sui clan was related to the Sacred Mountain, but it was not the Sacred Mountain. The entire Middle Barbarian City. The sacred mountain issued a bounty, posted a notice, painted a portrait, and spread it all over Central Continent. As long as anyone could provide information on Su Yi, Su Chun, Yanlin, Suicide Yama, and Shi Wuqing, there would be an unimaginable reward, enough to exchange for anything. Barbarian City of the Barbarian City. Many big and small forces had mobilized their entire sect. Once they found Su Yi and the others, they would be rich. Find them quickly. As long as we can find those people, we'll be rich. The entire Middle Barbarian City was in a frenzy to search for Su Yi, Su Chun, and the others. The King of Heaven's Pride, Overlord Su Yi, Unparalleled Thunderstorm, Su Chun, Yama, and Merciless West. These people could escape from the Sacred Mountain. Do you think it's easy to find them? Who knows if it's a blessing or a curse? Some people knew that although the reward was tempting, it was definitely not easy to obtain. If they really met Su Yi, Su Chun, and the others, they did not know if it was a blessing or a curse. The entire Middle Barbarian City was in a perilous situation. As time passed in the boundless sea, Su Yi was still sitting cross-legged on the isolated island. His body was wrapped in red clouds, and Yuan Qi lingered on the surface of his body. This time, Su Yi's injuries were too severe. Even his foundation was damaged. It was an unimaginable injury. Even after taking the blood jade spirit ginseng's whiskers and the spiritual liquid from the mysterious space, his recovery was still extremely slow. The isolated island was quiet. Only the crashing sound of the waves could be heard. Then, the waves would dissipate, and the waves would rise again. Someone's here. At a certain moment, Su Yi, whose eyes were closed, suddenly withdrew his aura. The light around his body dissipated, and Yuan Qi entered his body through his pores. He opened his eyes, and they regained some of their brightness. Then, it became deep again. But at this moment, although Su Yi had changed his clothes, his aura was still extremely weak. His black hair was disheveled and somewhat disheveled, making him look quite pitiful. Su Yi got up and hid in the crevice of the reef. He looked forward and felt that someone was approaching. Although he was in the middle of healing, Su Yi did not let down his guard. Following the gaze, Su Yi saw that in the boundless sea, several small boats had appeared at some point and were heading towards the isolated island. You can't escape. Let's see where a little girl like you can run to. Jijia, little girl, why don't you play with us? Maybe we'll let you live. Jijia, there's a good place ahead. This little girl must be afraid that she won't be able to display her strength on the boat and deliberately chose this place. Ha ha! There were loud shouts, accompanied by obscene laughter that echoed in the boundless sea. Su Yi looked around and was secretly on guard. It seemed that there were several small boats chasing after the boat at the front. He could faintly see that on the boat at the front there was a figure flashing. Before it reached the shore, it had already jumped off the boat and was running towards the isolated island. Su Yi frowned. This seemed to be some kind of dispute. In his current situation, he did not want to be involved. He immediately withdrew his aura and hid in the crevice of the reef. The figure was running and gradually approached. Her clothes were wet and clung to her exquisite body, making her curves even more prominent. The person who came looked panicked. Her black hair was disheveled, but one could vaguely see that her facial features were beautiful. It was a young girl. Su Yi estimated that the girl should be about 16 or 17 years old. At this time, she was holding a 3-foot-long sword in her hand. Her body was surging with Yuan Qi. Her clothes were not luxurious, but they were not too simple either. She looked like a maid from a rich family. Whoosh, whoosh. Little girl, where are you running to now? On the several small boats behind, several figures rushed down one after another and chased after the girl. There were several big men. Their skin was yellow from the sun. Their clothes were quite simple, like the clothes of the sea people, but each of them was full of killing intent and had obscene smiles on their faces. The girl ran quickly, looking panicked. Obviously, her cultivation was not a match for the several big men who were chasing after her. She was already exhausted. In the end, she was unable to support herself. Her legs went soft, and she sat on the beach. Ha ha! Where are you running to? Several big men laughed obscenely. There were a total of 8 people, and they immediately surrounded the girl in the middle. Their eyes were filled with undisguised passion as they stared intently at the young girl's curvaceous body. Their saliva was about to flow out of their mouths. What do you want to do? My sect leader will not let you go. Chapter 872. The figure was running, gradually getting closer. Her clothes were wet, clinging tightly to her already exquisite figure, making her curves even more prominent. The person who came looked panicked, and her black hair was scattered. However, one could vaguely see her beautiful facial features. It was a young girl. Sue estimated that the girl should be about 16 or 17 years old. At this time, she was holding a 3-foot-long sword in her hand. There was yuan qi flowing around her body. Her clothes were not luxurious, but they were not too simple either. She looked like a maid from a rich family. Whoosh, whoosh. Little girl, where are you running to now? On the several small boats behind, several figures rushed down one after another and chased after the girl. There were several burly men with yellowish skin. Their clothes were quite simple, like the clothes of people from the sea. However, each of them was filled with a murderous aura, and their faces were full of obscene smiles. The girl ran quickly with a panicked expression. It was obvious that her cultivation was not a match for the burly men who were chasing after her. She was already exhausted. In the end, she could no longer support herself. Her legs went soft, and she sat on the beach. Ha ha! Where are you running to? Several burly men laughed obscenely. There were a total of 8 people, and they immediately surrounded the girl. Their eyes were filled with undisguised passion as they stared intently at the young lady's curvaceous body. Their saliva was about to drip from their mouths. What do you want to do? My sect master will not let you go. Looking at the burly men's gazes, the girl knew very well what these people wanted to do. She subconsciously hugged her already bulging curves and vigilantly looked around at the burly men. So what if it's your sect master? Your young miss has already fallen into our hands. Do you think we're afraid of your sect master? When the time comes, there will naturally be people who will deal with your sect master. As for you, let us brothers have some fun first. A skinny, burly man said with an obscene smile. His gaze was fixed on the girl's towering chest, and he was about to drool. This little girl's development is really good. Her skin is so white. Compared to those girls in the brothel, it's much more tender. I've never played with such a tender chick. That's right. This little girl is getting more and more beautiful. If it's another 2 years, I'm afraid she'll be able to charm people to death. Have you guys noticed that this little girl seems to be getting more and more beautiful? The few burly men laughed evilly. They were like wolves and tigers as they stared at the young girl. It was as if they wanted to swallow her alive. They stared at the young and tender body under the wet dress, and their minds were already thinking of all kinds of good things. Some people noticed that this maid seemed to be getting more and more beautiful. Amidst the obscene laughter, the girl was getting more and more nervous and constantly retreating. Seeing the girl who was getting more and more nervous and scared, the burly men. Sue saw everything from the crevice of the reef. The girl was getting closer and closer to the reef. She's the girl's name, Suze's, the girl's, ses. She's faking it. Sue raised his eyebrows. This girl was faking it, as if she was waiting for something. Xiao. As Sue expected, suddenly, from the girl's body, a surge of yuan qi suddenly erupted. At the same time, the vibration caused the wet clothes on her body to flutter. The graceful figure was like an arc that suddenly exploded. The 3-feet-long sword in her hand emitted a sharp light with a wong sound. In her eyes, a fierce light surged. Walala. Everything happened very quickly. The girl had already made her preparations by pouring her yuan qi into the 3-feet-long sword. She immediately made her move. With the aid of her water-type yuan qi, the sword flashed like a green lightning bolt, causing the waves on the beach to ripple. Not good, this girl is cheating. Loud shouts sounded out. The burly men's obscene smiles suddenly changed, and they quickly retreated. Chi-la, but was already too late. The 3 burly men in front of the girl had their throats slit. Blood spurted out, and the tip of the sword pierced through the chest of the fourth burly man. Impossible! You're not that servant girl. Let the fourth burly man stare at the girl in front of him. The faintly discernible face under her loose hair instantly caused his pupils to shrink in horror. Chila! The girl pulled out her sword. Before the burly man could finish his words, he was already lying on the ground, unable to speak for the rest of his life. Quick, attack together! The expressions of the four remaining burly men changed drastically. However, they quickly regained their senses. Every day, they lived a life of licking blood from their blades. Their reactions were quick and nimble. Tightly gripping their weapons, Yuan Qi surged. Immediately, four attacks flew towards the girl. The four burly men did not have high cultivations. The strongest was only at the third level of the origin spirit stage, while two of them were even at the Yuan profound stage. However, their attacks were swift and fierce, and their baleful aura was oppressive. It was impossible for them to have such an aura if they had not been stained with blood. The girl's Yuan Qi surged. Although she was young, her cultivation had already reached the Yuan spirit stage. Sword light filled the sky. She seemed to have used her full strength in her first attack. Clang, clang. Metallic clangs rang out as sparks flew. Yuan Qi radiance spread out, causing sand and stones to fly in all directions as sand filled the sky. PFFF, one of the Yuan profound stage men, spat out large mouthfuls of blood. His chest had been slashed so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood flowed out like a fountain. His eyes were filled with shock as his body staggered, before unwillingly falling to the ground. The remaining Yuan profound stage man did not look good either. Quite a bit of his hair had been chopped off, and a sword light had flashed across his face. There were sword wounds on his body that were bleeding profusely. Still in a state of shock, he staggered backwards before falling to the ground. Qi! A blade light swept past the girl, breaking through her Yuan Qi defense. The girl retreated in a panic, but did not manage to completely avoid it. A wound was left on her arm, and her sleeve was torn apart, revealing her fair arm that was bleeding profusely. Swish! The girl stabilized her retreat and paused for a moment. Forming a sword art, the 3-foot-long sword in her hand flourished with green light. The sword moved like a snake as it shot out like lightning. Like lightning, the sword light was incomparably agile and had many transformations. It directly locked onto one of the burly men and turned into a sword light that enveloped the surroundings. It could be seen that this sword martial skill was quite extraordinary. Swish, swish. The golden spear exploded, and the burly man's eyes were filled with shock. He had already used all his strength to deal with it. The burly man was no match for the girl, and the large ringed saber in his hand was also shaken off. However, with his rich combat experience, which was tempered through life and death situations, he managed to avoid being hit in a way that did not look good, but was incomparably practical. Although the girl was young, she seemed to be very experienced. Her attacks were also very sharp. Rapidly changing sword arts, the sword light changed, and a sword mark was left on the burly man's back. Blood spurted out, and the burly man let out a blood-curdling scream. Swish! Chapter 873. The saber light was oppressive and had already closed in on the girl's back, as if it was going to cut her in half. The young girl's expression was solemn as she bit her lips. Her beautiful figure moved at an unbelievable angle, and her feet were like boulders that did not know how to move. Her slender waist seemed to have no bones as it drew a graceful and agile arc. Her chest was half hidden and half revealed, revealing a deep white cleavage that seemed to be about to pop out. The saber light was swift and fierce as it passed over the girl's face. The fierce wind cut off a few strands of her black hair, causing her face to burn in pain. Her hair danced wildly, revealing a complete face. Her features were delicate and pretty, and her big eyes were beautiful. She was definitely a beauty. You're not that maid. It was only at this moment that the man realized that the girl was not the one he wanted to chase. His expression changed drastically as shock gushed out. But it was already too late. A sword light swept from below, piercing through the man's chest. Chila! Blood spurted out as the man fell to the ground, his eyes filled with shock. Swish, swish, a figure immediately fled. The injured man of the essence spirit realm saw that the situation was not good and knew that he was no match for the girl. He immediately fled, heading towards the few small boats. Where do you think you're going? The girl knew that she could not let the man escape no matter what, so she quickly gave chase. The man was very fast. He had already fled to the sea and was about to jump onto a small boat. You can't escape, the girl shouted as green light gushed out of her eyes. The yuan qi in her body surged as she formed a sword technique. The water attribute yuan qi seemed to draw in the surrounding sea as she slashed out with her sword. The sword light was like a tide, instantly connecting with the waves and setting off layers upon layers of waves, forming a huge storm that immediately engulfed the man. A water attribute yuan qi martial artist had an absolute advantage in such a place. It was just like how a fire attribute martial artist had an advantage over other attribute martial artists in the volcanic region. Pucci, the man was swept up by the huge wave, his body several feet high. The sword light pierced through his chest, causing him to spit out blood and die. Looking at this scene, on the young girl's defeated face, Big Eyes let out a sigh of relief. Then, she spat out a large mouthful of blood. The series of violent attacks, just now, seemed to be the last of her strength. She returned to the beach with great difficulty. She seemed to have no strength left in her body. She sat down on the ground, her body completely wet, outlining her alluring curves. It seemed to be very difficult. The young girl sat down cross-legged with great difficulty. She wanted to use her breathing to heal her injuries. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth with her sleeve, then tore open her sleeve and wrapped it tightly around the wound on her arm. However, the young girl did not expect that at this moment, a figure would quietly appear. It was the Yuan profound realm man whose face had only been slashed by the sword light and whose face was covered in blood. He had not been killed yet. His gaze was dark and fierce as he found an opportunity to suddenly explode forth. A fist wrapped in yuan qi directly exploded towards the young girl's head. The young girl sensed it and her expression changed greatly. However, it was already too late for her to dodge. This was completely unexpected. Bang! As the punch landed, the young girl quickly leaped forward, narrowly avoiding the blow to her head. However, the punch landed on her back. Due to the distance between them, the young girl's beautiful figure was directly sent flying and crashed onto the ground. She vomited a large mouthful of blood, and her vision turned black as she fainted. The large man's face was covered in blood. His gaze was cold and fierce as he looked at the unconscious young girl. He looked at the faintly discernible curves of youth under the young girl's clothes that were almost completely soaked. There were some places where the soft and boneless barbarian demon connected with her slender and straight legs were faintly discernible. Immediately, his fierce gaze turned into a perverted smile as he coldly said in a low voice, "Lowly slave, you actually dare to hurt me. Then, let me have some fun first." As his voice faded, the large man was about to make his move. This was a stunner. He could not help but feel a trace of happiness in his heart. It was good that everyone else was dead. This stunner could be enjoyed by him alone. The heavens were treating him well. Hey, isn't this a little too despicable? However, at this moment, a faint voice rang out from behind the large man. Who is it? The large man's face instantly changed greatly. His cultivation was not high, but his experience told him that if someone was able to appear behind him without him noticing, that person's cultivation was many times stronger than others and was definitely an expert. However, when the large man saw the figure that appeared behind him, his vigilance and panic immediately disappeared. What appeared before the large man's eyes was only a small youth. His aura seemed to be weak, and his appearance was extremely miserable. Who are you? The large man looked at Su Yi and asked coldly. However, he did not dare to be careless. The young girl before him was also young, but her strength was so terrifying. She had actually reached the origin spirit stage. However, the large man did not believe that the brat before him could also be so strong. It was impossible for people with such terrifying talent to be everywhere. The youth that had walked out was naturally Su-yi, without a doubt. Su-yi hid behind a reef and saw everything clearly. Seeing that there was no one else in the surroundings, he could not just watch as a young girl was defiled in front of his eyes. If he did not save her, he would not be able to justify himself. Su-yi did not want to meddle in other people's business, but he indeed had to take action. Otherwise, he would be no different from a beast. Moreover, this was an unfamiliar place, and he needed to find someone to ask. I'll ask you a few questions. You'd better answer me honestly or die. Su-yi looked at the large man and asked. For some unknown reason, looking at the youth before him, the large man felt an uneasy and trembling feeling in his heart, even though there were clearly no aura fluctuations coming from his body. Brat, you're courting death. The large man attacked. This brat appearing alone in this desolate place was definitely abnormal. It was better to make the first move. Instantly, his fist exploded out. Bang! However, as soon as the burly man punched out, his vision blurred. A figure strangely appeared in front of him, and a palm pressed tightly against his fist, making it difficult for his fist to move even an inch further. He was unable to move at all. Not good. At this moment, the large man finally realized the true horror. This youth who did not seem to have any aura fluctuations was actually a terrifying expert. Scram! Su-yi shouted indifferently, and a huge force gushed out from his palm. Poochie! First start #bang bang. Instantly, the large man vomited blood, and his figure staggered back. He was directly shaken back and sat down on the ground. Chila! Su-yi's figure was like lightning and directly appeared in front of the large man. He grabbed the large man's neck with one hand, and a huge force crushed and imprisoned him. Chapter 874. His entire body was restrained, and his yuan qi was directly suppressed to the point that it was blocked. The man felt fear from the depths of his soul. Looking at the resolute face right in front of him, the large man couldn't help but be shocked. It turned out that this young man in front of him was even more terrifying than that woman. He was actually an absolutely terrifying expert. I will ask you a question, and you will answer. Otherwise, you will die. Su-yi looked at the man in front of him coldly. Now, he really needed to know roughly where this place was. So, he asked, "Where is this place?" The man was surprised and very puzzled. With his neck being held, it was difficult for him to speak. His face was red, and he replied hoarsely, "I don't know what you want to ask, but this is the Divine Dragon Sea region." The man was indeed puzzled. This young man appeared here alone. Could it be that he did not know where this place was? Could it be that he had fallen from the sky? Naturally, the man did not expect that Su-yi had indeed fallen from the sky. He did not know where this place was. Divine Dragon Sea region. Where does it belong? Is it the central region? It was Su-yi's turn to be puzzled. With his understanding of the world, he actually did not know where this Divine Dragon Sea region was. It seemed that there was no such place in the central region. Divine Dragon Sea region belongs to the Chaos region. Strictly speaking, this place is also within the Chaos region. It is very far from the central region. Although the man was puzzled, he still answered Su-yi's question honestly. Under the absolute threat, he did not dare to lie. Furthermore, there was nothing that he could not say. The man only prayed that if he told the truth, this young man would really let him live. Have we reached the Chaos region? Hearing this, Su-yi was surprised, but at the same time, there was a trace of joy in his heart. If this was really the Chaos region, then he did not need to be afraid of the Sacred Mountain. It was said that even the experts of the Sacred Mountain did not dare to casually enter a place like the Chaos region. Why are you chasing that woman? Who are you? Su-yi's expression did not change as he continued to ask. We are from the Sea Dragon Gang. This woman is from the Xinjiang faction. The burly man's eyes twitched, and he paused for a moment. His eyes were filled with doubt and astonishment. It seemed like there were some things that he did not understand. He continued to speak to Su. This woman seems to be the daughter of the Xianjian sect leader. We, the Sea Dragon Gang, were asked by someone to kidnap this woman. Later on, we found out that this woman's servant had escaped. In order to not alert the enemy, the elder ordered us to hunt down the servant. Unexpectedly, we were tricked. The one who escaped was the daughter of the Xianjian sect leader. Suyi's expression did not change. Listening to the man's words, it seemed to be true. As for Sea Dragon Gang and Xianjian sect, Su-yi had never heard of them. He guessed that they must be some of the powers in the Chaos region. My lord, please let me go. I've told you everything you wanted to know. Please spare my life. The burly man begged, hoping that the young man would spare his life. He don't die yet. Don't worry, I won't kill you. However, whether you can survive or not will depend on the heavens. If you're destined to die, don't blame me. Su-yi's eyes flashed with coldness. He let go of his hand, and at the same time, he clenched his fist and punched the burly man's lower abdomen. Bang! A dull sound was heard. When the burly man sensed that something was wrong, his pupils shrank. His eyes were filled with horror. But before he could react, the huge force in the burly man's body blasted into his Dantian's Yuanqi vortex. A dark force swept out and shattered his Dantian's Yuanqi vortex. He didn't even have time to scream before his vision turned black and he fainted. Su-yi did not show any mercy to this burly man from the Sea Dragon Gang. This burly man was not a good person. Leaving him alive would be a disaster. At least he kept his promise and did not kill him. Subsequently, Su-yi threw the bodies of the burly man and the surrounding Sea Dragon Gang members onto a small boat and pushed the boat into the sea. As for whether the burly man could survive or be swallowed by the waves in this vast sea, it would depend on the heavens. After cleaning up the surroundings, Su-yi went to the girl who had fainted. At this moment, Su-yi was able to carefully look at the girl in front of him. She was about 16 or 17 years old and was dressed like a maid. However, at this moment, her pale face showed a delicate beauty. Although she still had a childish air, it was not difficult to imagine that in the future, she would definitely become a beauty. Although the girl was beautiful, Su-yi did not look at her much. Ever since he came to this world, Su-yi had always met beauties who could cause the downfall of cities and countries. He had known Lu Ruashi since he was young. Later on, when Su-yi walked out of the barbarian city, he met the cross-dressing girl. Ling Qinxue, Shangguan Shui, Mu Yao, Gong Qi, Sakura Asaka, and so on. Any one of them was better than this girl. However, at this moment, the girl's entire body was wet. Her clothes were tightly stuck to her graceful body, causing her originally exquisite and curvy curves to appear even more alluring. This girl seemed to have developed much earlier than her peers, especially some places that were faintly discernible. This caused Su-yi, who was at an age where he was full of vigor, to involuntarily take a few more glances. What are you looking at? Don't look at indecent things. Su-yi warned himself as he scolded himself in his heart. However, his gaze was still fixated on the curves and the faintly discernible part of her body. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. After checking, Su-yi found that the girl should be fine. She had just exhausted too much of her strength. It seemed that her injuries were not light. Coupled with the sneak attack from the burly man, she fainted. In any case, this girl would not die. Su-yi planned to leave. It was not easy to escape from the hands of the people from the Holy Mountain. Su-yi did not want to inexplicably enter the Chaos region and cause any trouble. There were still 2 small boats on the island. Su-yi planned to row the boat and leave. After taking 2 steps, he turned around and looked at the unconscious girl. He frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "Although we don't know each other, we can't leave her in this desolate place. What if someone passes by and a barbarian beast appears?" After hesitating for a moment, Su-yi knew that he was already in the Chaos region. He was not in a hurry to leave. Walking back to the girl's side, Su-yi checked the girl's injuries. He pinched open the girl's teeth and saw her pure white teeth. Her fragrant red tongue was sparkling and translucent. He stuffed a medicinal pill into her mouth. "But don't ask about your future." Without any worries, he even gave up a healing medicinal pill. This was a loss. Su-yi could only comfort himself like this. In order to prevent the Sea Dragon gang from coming, Su hid the two small boats under the reef. Then, he carried the girl into a wider crevice. With the soft jade in his arms, that almost faintly discernible delicate body was in his arms. Soft and fragrant, Su could not help but feel his heart burning. It took him a lot of effort to suppress it. Walala, the sky and water of the sea were the same color, vast and boundless. The surrounding waves continued to crash against the lone island, stirring up waves. His injuries were too serious and far from being healed. Su continued to heal his injuries. Sitting cross-legged and operating the Origin Supreme technique, Su continued to heal his injuries. His body was still refining the blood jade spirit ginseng's spiritual whiskers and spiritual liquid. On the vast sea area, a huge ship that was at least 100 feet long stood tall. It was engraved with beast patterns. The light was faint. It was like a huge dragon that exposed its sponge. Its speed was neither fast nor slow. On the deck, there were figures standing upright on both sides of the ship. On the swaying ship, these figures did not move at all. The aura on their bodies was fierce, and there was a murderous aura fluctuating. Obviously, they were used to this kind of life on the sea. On the bow, there were many figures standing there with their robes fluttering in the wind. In the lead was a middle-aged man who looked like he was in his 40s. He had a strong figure and short black hair. He was dressed in tight clothes, and his eyes were fierce. Why haven't they come back yet? Could it be that something happened? Behind the middle-aged man, a slightly plump man spoke. He looked at the side of the ship and seemed to be waiting for something. These guys must be unable to hold it in. They're all staring at the little girl. They must be having fun, said someone. There was envy in his eyes. He knew who those people were. At this moment, they were most likely going to capture the maid and have fun with her. Thinking that the little girl was still a virgin, the man's heart was burning with lust. If he had known earlier, he would have gone there himself. Sooner or later, all of them will die in the hands of girl. If they spoil our plan, we will punish them severely. The leading man snorted. Hearing the words of the burly man, the expressions of the surrounding people suddenly became solemn. Deputy faction leader, we have succeeded this time. However, if Xinjian sect finds out about this, they will not let it go. Those people from Xinjian sect are not to be trifled with. Immediately after, the slightly plump man who had just spoken had a look of worry in his eyes. Xinjian sect was not to be trifled with. This time, Sea Dragon Gang had kidnapped the little miss of Xinjian sect. If Xinjian sect knew about this, they would not let them go. Wealth comes from danger. Xinjian sect will have their people to deal with us. As long as we capture the little girl, we will have succeeded. Only our own people will know about this. As long as we don't leak the news, no one will know about it. After pausing for a while, the middle-aged man's eyes turned cold, and he said, "Moreover, I'm afraid that Xinjian faction will no longer exist in this chaos region. Once we hand him over, our Sea Dragon faction will be different from before. We will soar into the sky like the sun. Sea Dragon Gang can only stay in the Divine Dragon Ocean. Now that we have a backer, we will be able to go ashore." Someone laughed and looked forward to a beautiful future. Elders, Vice Faction Master, bad news, bad news. Chapter 875. What is going on? The burly man's face darkened as he asked the disciple. Vice Faction Leader, that girl. She is a girl. The disciple panicked and panted. The one who ran away was the lady of the Xinjian faction. The one who stayed behind was her maid. They had changed their clothes. It was dark last night, so we did not notice them. That's right. That's right. Hearing this, the burly man's expression changed greatly, and his figure immediately rushed into the boat. What? Bastards. A bunch of trash. Go and find her. Quick. After a moment, this shout came out from the ship, and it was filled with rage. Asterisk swoosh, asterisk, many small boats dashed out from the ship and headed towards a certain direction. There were many people on the boats, and their auras were fierce and murderous. Time passed by slowly, and the sky was getting dark. The afterglow of the setting sun covered the island with a layer of orange-red halo. A thin layer of clouds appeared on the boundless sea far away. First here, on the horizon, the red sun hung low in the sky. The afterglow of the setting sun dyed the layers of clouds with golden light. It was like a burning flame at the end of the horizon. On the sea, the colorful clouds were flowing and the waves were sparkling. Slowly, the sky turned dark. In the crevice of the reef, the girl who had been unconscious all this time made a sound. Her aura seemed to be fluctuating under the effect of the pill. Phew! He stopped his cultivation. He kept his hand still, and the red glow around him disappeared. His yuan qi entered his body through his pores. He opened his eyes, and a ray of light flashed. The girl's eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. She looked lost for a moment. Suddenly, the girl struggled to get up. It seemed like her injuries were not light. Her body felt like it was falling apart. She could not help but groan. She did not manage to stand up. Instead, she sat up halfway. "You are fine. You will be fine after some time," he said to the girl who had just woken up. Looking at the face that appeared in front of her, the girl's expression changed greatly. Without any hesitation, she directly slapped her palm towards Su-yi. As he had just woken up, the yuan energy in his body had yet to gather. Thus, the young lady's palm strike did not have much momentum. Instead, it nearly caused him to fall to the ground. Biting the hand that feeds you. Su-yi dodged to the side, frowning slightly. He had saved this woman out of the kindness of his heart, but she actually bit the hand that fed her. It seemed that all women were like this. He couldn't help muttering to himself that in the future, as long as it was a woman, he would definitely not save her. When a young girl heard this, she came back to her senses. That voice did not seem to belong to the Sea Dragon gang. The person in front of her seemed to be very young and was not a disciple of the Sea Dragon gang. Recalling the scene before she fainted, the girl checked everything on her body. When she saw her exquisite figure, which was almost faintly discernible, and in this narrow crevice between the reefs, the young girl's beautiful face immediately turned pale. She carefully checked her body, afraid that she had lost something. At the same time, she said, "Why am I here? Where's this place? We are still on the island. Those people are already dead. I was afraid that someone would come looking for us, so I brought you here." Su-yi replied snappily. He had saved this woman out of the kindness of his heart, but he did not get a good reward. He was quite unhappy in his heart. "Why did you bring me here?" The young girl checked her body and did not seem to find anything missing. There were also no traces of her body being touched. She only looked at her faintly discernible body and stared straight at Su-yi as she asked, "You fainted, so naturally I carried you in. I can't just kick you in." Su-yi raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. The young girl glared at Su-yi as if she was about to go crazy. She thought that she was actually carried by a man like this. Who knows what this man did while she was unconscious? The more she thought, the more the young girl's eyes burned with anger. However, she could not vent her anger and could only be incomparably sullen. "Don't worry, you are intact. I have no interest in that. I'm not like those people from the Sea Dragon gang." Looking at the young girl's reaction, Su-yi said helplessly, It seemed that the pain in her heart had been exposed. The young girl's pale face and her ears were somewhat hot and rosy for no reason. The young girl recalled the scene before she fainted and did not want to think about it at this moment. It seemed that she was not missing anything. She asked Su-yi, "You saved me. Did you kill the disciple of the Sea Dragon gang?" Su-yi nodded. The young girl's eyes moved. She felt that there was a healing elixir spreading in her body. It was obvious that the person in front of her had given her the healing elixir. The vigilance in her heart was slightly relaxed. Good intentions are treated as ill intent. "Since you are awake, then I will take my leave. Take care." This woman had already woken up. Su-yi did not want to cause more trouble. He could not even protect himself now. It was better to leave this place as soon as possible. Seeing that Su-yi was about to leave and that he didn't seem to have any ulterior motives towards her, the girl frowned as she sensed her body's condition. Under the moonlight, her face appeared even paler. She said to Su, wait. Is there anything else? Su turned his head and asked. The young girl looked at Su. Under the moonlight, she felt that the man in front of her seemed to be very young. Her vision was a little dim. Under the haziness, there was a hint of handsomeness. She said, I have to leave this place as soon as possible. However, my injuries are too serious now. I am afraid that I cannot leave by myself. If you bring me along, and on top of that, you saved me. When the time comes, I will definitely reward you generously. At this moment, the young girl was very clear that she had to leave this place as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the Sea Dragon gang found out that she had been swapped, they would definitely come looking for her. At that time, she would not be able to escape. I saved you because of humanitarianism, not because of the reward. I'm not interested in bringing you along anymore. Take care of yourself. He shook his head. He was not interested. Not to mention the normal reward, he would not be interested in it. He could not even protect himself now. More importantly, Su-yi did not want to be with this young girl anymore. The Sea Dragon gang was looking for this young girl. Presumably, the Xinjian sect behind this young girl was not easy to deal with. In his current situation, it was better for him not to get involved in the chaos region. All right, I left a boat for you over there. Goodbye. After saying that, Su-yi did not turn his head back. Under the night sky, Su-yi pushed a small boat to the surface of the sea and jumped onto it. The boat shook and almost overturned. There was a paddle on the boat, but Su-yi was not very good at it. The ship swayed and spun on the spot. Su-yi finally managed to get a grasp of the direction, only to discover an even bigger problem. Not to mention how long it would take for them to reach the shore in this vast sea. Su-yi looked at the bright moon in the sky and could clearly distinguish north from south. However, he did not know which direction to go and which way to reach the shore. The young lady seemed to have recovered some of her yuan qi. Unknowingly, she was standing on the reef. As her yuan qi surged, traces of water vapor appeared on her wet clothes. It was like steam, following which, her clothes were no longer wet and returned to normal. The girl's gaze was fixed on Su-yi from afar. She watched as Su-yi swayed and spun on the surface of the sea. Her pale face couldn't help but reveal a slight smile. She already knew what was going on. Soon, a small boat appeared beside Su-yi. The young girl on the boat was standing straight. She did not even paddle, but the boat was moving quickly. Su-yi, who was in a daze, saw this scene and could not help but be stunned. He looked to the side, trying to see what was wrong with the young girl. She could actually make the boat move by itself. Do you want to cooperate? You don't seem to be good at ferrying. I can teach you. How about you bring me along? Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave this place. The young girl stopped the boat beside Su-yi. It seemed like she wanted to discuss a cooperation with Su-yi. However, her tone and expression showed that she did not want to discuss. She concluded that Su-yi had no other choice. Okay, Su-yi had no other choice. There was nothing to hesitate about. Even if he knew which direction to go, if he paddled with his hands, he did not know how long it would take. Who knew how big this sea was? Okay, then it's a deal. The young girl concluded that Su-yi would agree. Yuan qi flowed from the tip of her foot. With a light tap of her foot, her graceful figure suddenly leaped out and landed lightly on Su-yi's boat. Crack, crack. At the same time, the boat that the young girl had just sat on cracked and shattered. It was swept away by the waves. Swoosh, as the young girl landed. Yuan qi flowed from the soles of her feet. The boat suddenly trembled and swept forward at a rather fast speed. Watch carefully. Control the yuan qi under your feet. Don't be impatient. The most important thing is to control the yuan qi to move the boat. Give it a try. The young girl sat down and demonstrated to Su-yi. So that's how it is. Su-yi finally understood. No wonder the boat under the young girl's feet seemed to be sliding on its own. It seemed mysterious, but in fact it was very simple. She used the yuan qi under her feet to swirl around the bottom of the boat, forming a whirlpool as a driving force. However, although this seemed simple, it was actually not simple. This required one to have an extremely skilled and accurate control of one's yuan qi. Su-yi tried it. At first, it was slightly uncomfortable. The boat swayed and spun in place. The surrounding waves surged. However, Su-yi soon found his balance. The boat began to slide, and he was even able to control the direction. The young girl's expression changed slightly. She was very shocked at this moment. It seemed easy, but she knew that it required an extremely precise control of Yuan Qi. This control had nothing to do with one's cultivation. It seemed that this man was not easy to deal with. He was not an ordinary person. "Where are we going now?" Su-yi asked the young girl. With this method, it was much easier than paddling with his hands. However, it consumed a lot of Yuan Qi. Just go straight east. Try to be fast. As long as we reach the shore, we will be safe. The young girl replied to Su-yi, "It's you who is safe. I have always been safe." Chapter 876. Don't forget, we are now on the same boat. If the Sea Dragon Gang comes looking for us, do you think they will let you go? The girl said to Su-yi indifferently. Su-yi was startled. No wonder this girl destroyed the boat. It seemed like he had been tricked by her. Women. Su-yi felt helpless. Women were indeed poisonous. If the Sea Dragon Gang came after them, they would not only deal with this girl. It would be hard for him to escape. "Aren't you afraid that I will leave you behind?" Su-yi looked at the girl and said. Looking at Su-yi, the girl smiled faintly and said, "If you want to kill me, why did you save me? Don't worry. When we reach the shore, I will keep my words. I will repay you generously." Su-yi's eyes twitched. This girl was young, but she was not ordinary. She had him under her control. Swoosh, using Yuan Qi under his feet, Su-yi steered the boat. No matter what, he had to leave this place as soon as possible. Those people from a Sea Dragon Gang did not return. He was afraid that someone would come looking for them. Once they encountered them, it would not be easy to deal with them. "Who are you? Why would the Sea Dragon Gang find trouble with you?" Su-yi pretended not to know. He wanted to test if this girl was telling the truth. "I am from the Xinjian sect. The Xinjian sect's sect master is my father. This Sea Dragon Gang is only a fourth-rate power in the Divine Dragon Sea area. However, I don't know why they dare to deal with my Xinjian sect. There must be someone behind them who wants to deal with my Xinjian sect. They must have gotten the news that I went out alone and kidnapped me. Luckily, I had some tricks on my sleeves and managed to escape. You should know what happened after that." The girl said to Su-yi. Her eyes flashed with a sharp light. Listening to the girl's words and what the Sea Dragon Gang's disciples said, Su-yi guessed that this girl was not lying. "My name is Ji Han. Now that you know my identity and you have saved me, I will not mistreat you." Ji Han said to Su-yi, with her identity and the status of a Xinjian sect, this was a promise. "I would like to know who is the strongest person in the Sea Dragon Gang and what is his cultivation level." Su-yi asked Ji Han. After all, the people from the Sea Dragon Gang were chasing after Ji Han. It would be better to understand the situation. Hearing Su-yi's words, Ji Han was surprised that Su-yi didn't seem to have any reaction towards the Xinjian sect. However, he still replied, "The strongest person in the Sea Dragon Gang should be the gang leader, Meng Xianglong. I'm not sure about his exact cultivation, but he should be in the Origin Emperor realm. The vice gang leader, Qin Jian, is in the Origin Void realm and shouldn't be far from the Origin Emperor realm." Qin Jian is not far from the Origin Emperor realm. Su-yi frowned. An expert in the Origin Void realm who is not far from the Origin Emperor realm. Normally, with the Green Emperor and his brother, Merciless West, by his side, there was nothing to be afraid of. But now it was not good. It was better not to encounter such an expert. Looking at Su-yi's reaction, Ji Han thought that Su-yi was still afraid. She said, "Don't worry. As long as we reach the shore, it will be the territory of my Xinjian sect. We'll be safe then. The Sea Dragon Gang is nothing in front of my Xinjian sect. They will pay the price when the time comes." Su-yi nodded softly. To avoid any trouble, he increased the Yuan Qi under his feet to increase the speed of the boat. He hoped that they could reach the shore sooner. "What's your name? Why are you here alone?" Ji Han was a little curious. This person didn't seem old, but he was able to kill the people from the Sea Dragon Gang. Judging from the fluctuation of Yuan Qi on his body, he didn't seem to be weak. Perhaps he had some background, but judging from his speech and behavior, he didn't seem to know anything, nor did he seem to have any background. Moreover, the nearest shore was quite far away. This person didn't know how to ferry, so he didn't know how to get here. Sui hesitated for a moment and didn't say much. Seeing that Sui didn't say much, Jihanoa didn't ask any more questions. She took a deep breath and sensed that Sui had also taken control of the ferry. She said to Sui, "My injuries are not light. Let me do some breathing exercises first." After saying that, Jihanoa didn't care if Sui agreed or not. She sat cross-legged on the boat and began to refine the medicinal power in her body. She didn't worry about Sui at all. Sui was helpless, but he couldn't do anything about it. Although it consumed a lot of yuan qi, he had recovered a little. Jihanoa was indeed seriously injured. Whoosh! Yuan qi gushed out from the soles of his feet. Sui increased the speed of the boat to avoid any trouble from the Sea Dragon gang. The Green Emperor and his big brother, Desperate Yama, Merciless West, were still in the mysterious space. He didn't know if they had woken up yet. Even at his peak, he couldn't contend against an Origin Void Realm expert, let alone in his current predicament. The night was as cold as water, enveloping the vast sea. A lone boat sailed across, stirring up ripples on the surface of the water. As time slowly passed, Jihanoa's body was also shrouded in a layer of faint green light. Water attribute yuan qi lingered around her graceful figure and drilled out from the surface of her body. The surrounding water also seemed to be affected by something as it constantly fluctuated around the hull. It was like boiling water, which was very strange. Whoosh whoosh, 3 small boats quietly appeared in the distance at an extremely fast speed. "I see it, it's in front. Quick!" On the 3 small boats, there were figures moving. When someone saw the small boat in front, he immediately shouted with joy in his eyes. Not good. Sui had been vigilant of his surroundings. When he saw the 3 small boats rapidly approaching, he didn't need to think too much to know that the Sea Dragon gang had caught up with them. Boom! Frowning slightly, yuan qi gushed out from the soles of his feet. Sui exerted all his strength, and the boat trembled. Suddenly, the boat's speed increased as it rapidly shot out. This commotion woke up Jihanoa, who was meditating and recuperating. He opened his slightly closed eyes and looked behind him. Not good, it's the Sea Dragon gang. They've caught up. Jihanoa's pale complexion greatly changed. She immediately stood up. Although she had been meditating for 2 hours, she had only recovered a little strength. Her expression immediately turned grave. Sui had already exerted all his strength, but the speed of the 3 small boats was getting faster and faster. They quickly caught up with them in a semi-encirclement. The Sea Dragon gang has an advantage on the water. We're in trouble now. Jihanoa's expression was grave as she said to Sui, "Stop, you can't escape. Stop. Let's see where you can escape to." Chapter 877. Update. Get on FQ as soon as possible. H equals Sui's gaze swept across the 3 ships. There were a total of 15 disciples from the Sea Dragon gang. Their aura fluctuated and filled the air with killing intent. Phew! Sui secretly let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, from the aura of the Sea Dragon gang's disciples, the strongest among them was an old man who had just reached the 1st level of Yuanzhen realm. If they were to put up a fight, they might still have a chance. We're in big trouble now. They are after me. I will hold them back first. If there's a chance, you should think of a way to escape first. Go to Xinjian sect and tell them about it. Someone will reward you accordingly. Jihanoa frowned. There were so many disciples from the Sea Dragon gang, and each of their aura was much stronger than the ones who chased after her. These were the true elites of the Sea Dragon gang. She knew that she would not be able to escape. This person was not the target of the Sea Dragon gang. She hoped that there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that she could escape. As long as the news reached Xinjian sect, she would not be in big trouble. Sui was moved. This woman did not forget about him at this critical moment. Although she wanted him to inform Xinjian sect, at least she still had some conscience. Surrender. Let's see where you can run to. This little girl is so cunning. She actually switched and escaped. She made us get scolded by the vice leader. Several disciples of the Sea Dragon gang looked gloomy, and their killing intent fluctuated. This little girl had escaped, and they had all been reprimanded by the deputy gang leader. If they couldn't find this little girl, they would all be in trouble. At this moment, seeing this girl, their mood could be imagined. How are you in the water? I will hold them back. You go into the water first. This is your only chance. But the Sea Dragon gang members are good in the water. How much chance you have depends on your luck. Jihanua came to Su Yi's side. The sword in her hand was emitting a green light. Her pale face was looking at the figures on the 3 ships vigilantly. Whoosh! Just as Jihanua finished her words, a figure flashed on the ship and Su Yi's figure disappeared. Jihanua only felt a blur in front of his eyes, and the figure in front of him disappeared. He was stunned for a moment, and then the look in his eyes changed. Chila! The surface of the water surged, and a figure swept out like an afterimage. When Su Yi's figure appeared again, he was already in front of a small boat at the front. The Yuan Qi under his feet swept, as if he was crossing a river on a reed. His body rose into the air like a ghost, and a big saber suddenly appeared in his hand. Whoosh! He slashed out with his saber. The saber light was like lightning, and the crimson light was like a rainbow. In an instant, it descended like a thunderbolt. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, Su Yi's figure shot out, as if he was traversing through the void. The red Yuan Qi under his feet was like a red storm, and with a backhand slash, he slashed to the side. Buzz! It was too fast. The 2 sabers seemed to resound with the roar of a dragon. It was like a thunderstorm. The saber light was resplendent as it chopped down with an incomparably ferocious stance. The surrounding waves immediately surged, and huge waves soared into the sky. Chilala! There was no turning back. Under the 2 sabers, the 2 ships were directly chopped into pieces like tofu. The swift and fierce saber light swept across. The Sea Dragon gang's disciples had yet to come back to their senses. Under their horrified gazes, they were directly turned into a blood mist. Not good. There's an expert. Quickly go into the water. On the 3rd boat, the strongest level 1 Yuan Zhun realm old man shouted. He could feel the aura of the former, which made him shiver for no reason. There was actually an expert beside the former. His first reaction was that there was an expert from the Xinjian sect. Immediately, he rushed out, wanting to dive into the water. As long as they were in the water, they would have an advantage. At least, their chances of survival would be much higher. Buzz! Above the void, there was a saber light rotating like an arc of lightning, like a crescent moon across the void. The faint shadow of the saber light was like the shadow of a dragon. Just as the last disciple of the Sea Dragon gang wanted to escape, it had already landed. Boom! As the saber light landed, the terrifying pressure was fierce and violent. The surrounding waves were like a violent dragon dancing, destroying everything. The surroundings of the boat almost turned into a huge whirlpool, and then the boat was shattered into pieces. Screams of agony could be heard as a few Sea Dragon gang disciples were killed. Even a 50-year-old Yuan Zhun stage martial artist was no exception. Above the void, Su Yi landed on the surface of the sea. His feet tapped on the ground, and his Yuan Qi swept out. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, his figure jumped back onto the boat. Everything happened in a short period of time, and then the surroundings calmed down. Su Yi withdrew the saber in his hand. His face, which had recovered a little bit of color, turned pale again. He stuffed a few elixirs in his hand into his mouth. Looking at the figure in front of her, Jihanua was dumbfounded. Under the moonlight, the big eyes on her fair face almost popped out of her eye sockets. At this moment, Jihanua realized that the strength of this young guy in front of her was actually so strong. His attacks were clean and ruthless. How much longer before we can go ashore? Su Yi ignored Jihanua's astonishment and asked. These 10 disciples of the Sea Dragon gang were probably just scouts. It wouldn't be long before the real experts of the Sea Dragon gang came. They had to leave as soon as possible, or else they would be in big trouble. With our current speed, we can go ashore in about 20 hours. Hearing Su Yi's words, Ji Hanua came back to her senses. 20 or so hours. Su Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. There was still a whole day's time. You continue to heal. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Knowing that there was no time to delay and no other choice, Su Yi said helplessly. Yuan Shi swept out from the soles of his feet, and he continued to urge the boat to go ashore as soon as possible. Ji Hanua hesitated for a moment. Her expression slightly changed. She then continued to sit cross-legged, closed her eyes, and began to circulate her qi to heal her injuries. The waves gently brushed, the sea and the sky were the same color, and the heaven and earth were vast. Oh, not knowing where it came from, or if it came from a distant place, there was a beast's roar echoing in the night sky. Su Yi urged the boat to move quickly, not daring to have the slightest delay. He looked around vigilantly, but he didn't find any people of the Sea Dragon gang chasing after them. In the vast sea, there wasn't even an island to be seen. The sky gradually brightened, and at the intersection of the sea and the sky, a touch of white appeared in the east. Huff! Ji Hanua's aura was restrained, and the Yuan Qi that lingered on the surface of her body drilled into her body. She opened her eyes, and there was a flicker of light in her eyes. Her pale face seemed to have recovered a little. Chapter 878. It was a face with shoulder-length black hair that was slightly disheveled, and an angular face was faintly discernible. His seemingly thin figure was tall and straight, and his skin was not fair. Instead, it revealed a faint bronze color, and he naturally had a complicated temperament that could not be concealed. Ji Hanua couldn't help but take a few more glances at such a young man. Her heart was even more shaken and rippled. This young man's age wasn't much different from hers, but last night, he killed the Sea Dragon Gang's members in a clean and swift manner. His strength had actually reached such a powerful stage. Let me do it. You take a break, Ji Hanua said. She could see that the young man before her had some serious injuries on his body. His aura was somewhat weak, and the exhaustion of the night had made him even weaker. However, he had been persevering. Okay. Su Yi saw that Ji Hanua had stopped her breathing to heal her injuries. After a night, she seemed to have recovered a little. He also needed to take a break. Without any hesitation, Su Yi took Ji Hanua's place. He sat cross-legged at the stern of the boat and began to heal his injuries. A moment later, a scarlet light spread out from Su Yi's body. Yuan Qi rippled, and a rumbling sound could be faintly heard from his body. An invisible pressure spread out. What a powerful pressure! The cultivation technique he's practicing must be extraordinary. Ji Hanua was shocked. She could be considered as someone with good eyesight. Sensing the aura on Su Yi's body, she could tell that this young man called Su Yi must be practicing an extraordinary cultivation technique. Whoosh! Ji Hanua's cultivation was obviously not as high as Su Yi's, but the speed of the boat was not much slower than Su Yi's. The sky was getting brighter and brighter. A red sun rose from the horizon, emitting thousands of rays of golden light. It was incomparably gorgeous. As the morning glow shone, the sea surface was suffused with golden waves of light, illuminating Ji Hanua's slightly childish yet youthful face. As the sea breeze gently brushed past, her figure was exquisite and curvaceous. Turning her head to look at the youth at the stern of the ship, Ji Hanua could not help but take a closer look. Distinct facial features, slightly messy shoulder-length black hair, bronze skin, and the complicated aura on his body. All of these gave her a feeling that this youth called Su Yi before her had experienced many things and had many stories to tell. Su Yi healed himself. He revolved the primordial origin supreme art to refine the remaining spiritual whiskers and spiritual liquid energy in his body. Although he wasn't healing in the mysterious space, Su Yi recovered quite quickly with the energy of the spirit whiskers and spirit liquid, as well as the power of the Origin Supreme technique. However, this time, his injuries were too serious. It even affected his foundation, so it was a bit slow. The great void spirit sea had been successfully cultivated. The vital qi in Su Yi's body surged and rumbled. Within the spirit sea, fluorescent light rippled like the sun. Hula, as time passed, there was a long ripple on the surface of the sea. It was like an arrow, leaving a long ripple mark and setting off waves. Rumble. Suddenly, the small boat trembled. Huge waves rose and almost overturned the boat. He suddenly woke up. He retracted his breath and opened his eyes. At the same time, he had already stood up. Not good. The Sea Dragon Gang's barbaric beasts have caught up. Ji Hanua's face was solemn. She looked around vigilantly, and her expression changed. Woo-woo. A strange woo-woo sound came from the depths of the water. Huge waves surged around the small boat as if forming a whirlpool, trapping the boat and spinning it. Not good. No matter how Ji Hanua urged the boat, she couldn't break out. The small boat was swept by the huge waves and kept swaying and spinning. It seemed that it would be overturned and shattered at any time. Bang, bang, bang. 3 loud sounds were heard. 3 huge creatures jumped out from the huge waves. 3 enormous black sharks leaped out of the water. Their enormous bodies were over 100 feet long. Their entire bodies were serene and suffused with a black glow. Their bloody mouths were suffused with a baleful aura that caused one to do evil. Their sharp fangs added a sinister chill to their appearance. The 3 behemoths surged, stirring up monstrous waves. The surrounding waves were like tornadoes that lifted the small boat dozens of feet high. If it wasn't for Ji Hanua's Yuan Qi, the boat would have been shattered. Black Demon Black Shark. He had never seen this barbaric beast before. However, he recognized it. It's an aquatic barbaric beast whose bloodline isn't low. It's huge and extremely ferocious. These are the Sea Dragon Gang's barbaric beasts. Since they're here, the Sea Dragon Gang's experts must be nearby. Ji Hanua's face turned pale. Putting aside the fact that the Sea Dragon Gang's experts weren't far away, just these 3 Black Demon Black Sharks were already hard for them to deal with. These 3 Black Demon Black Sharks were at the 9th level of the Demon Spirit Realm. Now that they're in the water, it's even harder to deal with them. Evil creatures scram. On the boat, Su Yi's gaze sank. He circulated the Origin Supreme art within his body, and a domineering, destructive aura spread out. In an instant, the 3 Black Demon Black Sharks seemed to have sensed something. As they leaped out of the water, their ferocious eyes were filled with horror. Amidst the whining and roaring sounds, they trembled in fear and crawled on the surface of the water. The look in their ferocious eyes was completely replaced by fear. Looking at the scene before her, Ji Hanua's eyes were filled with shock. She looked at Su Yi in complete shock. She clearly saw how Su Yi's roar made the 3 Black Demon Black Sharks crawl in fear. Let's go. Su Yi's face was grave. Just as he expected, the Origin Supreme art could also suppress the barbaric demon beasts in the water. But the appearance of these 3 Black Demon Black Sharks meant that the Sea Dragon Gang's experts weren't far away. Su Yi couldn't help but worry. Circulating Yuan Qi under his feet, Su Yi urged the boat to move quickly. He then asked Ji Hanua, "How much longer until we reach the shore?" "About 6 hours." Ji Hanua recovered from her shock and looked around. She then said to Su Yi, "But we only have to hold on for 2 hours. There should be plenty of merchant ships in front of us. The Sea Dragon Gang wouldn't dare to attack a place with a lot of people. I don't think they have the guts to do so. I'm afraid that we won't make it in time." Su Yi narrowed his eyes. From behind, there were black dots rapidly approaching. He was afraid that the Sea Dragon Gang's experts had already caught up to them. "It's the Sea Dragon Gang." Following Su Yi's gaze, Ji Hanua turned around and frowned her brows. A 3-foot-long sword was tightly gripped in her hand. Whoosh! Su Yi didn't say anything. The Yuan Qi under his feet quickly surged as he urged the boat to move faster. Whoosh! Strange cries kept coming from behind. The black dots were getting bigger and clearer. 4 huge bee silhouettes were half revealed from the water. On their backs, there were several figures standing, emitting an oppressive, baleful aura. "You can't escape." Chapter 879. They were 4 gigantic black demon sharks. Compared to the 3 9th-level demon spirit realm black demon sharks that Su-Yi previously intimidated, their auras were much stronger. They were all in the 1st or 2nd level of the demon true realm. On the backs of the 4 black demon sharks, there were dozens of sea dragon triad disciples. Many of them were in the Yuan true realm. Their auras fluctuated with terrifying killing intent. All of them were in the 4th or 5th level of the Yuan true realm. This is really troublesome. Ji Hanua's face was grave. This was a group of experts from a sea dragon triad. Ji Hanua knew that Su-Yi's strength was beyond his imagination, but it was impossible for him to deal with so many experts from the sea dragon triad. From the auras that spread out behind him, Ji Hanua knew that there were several demon true realm black demon sharks and several Yuan true realm experts. No matter how strong Su-Yi was, he was only around the same age as him. No matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to deal with so many experts from a sea dragon triad. You go first. Don't wait for me. I'll catch up with you. Right at this moment, as Ji Hanua's voice faded, his vision blurred. Su-Yi's figure disappeared once again. Like a series of afterimages, he reappeared above the ocean. His figure swept out. Yuan Qi surged from the soles of his feet. Su-Yi leapt into the air for a short period of time. His robe fluttered and his hair fluttered behind him. The aura from his body was like the wrath of thunder. His eyes were like torches as his right foot stomped down. In an instant, a Yuan Qi whirlpool swept out from Su-Yi's feet like a storm towards a 1st-level demon, true realm black demon shark. Rings of black earth, attributed Yuan Qi swept out like waves. Asterisk, boom. Asterisk as his foot landed, the ocean trembled and the air rumbled. Monstrous waves were set off in the surroundings. Not good. Someone on the back of the black demon shark had a drastic change in expression. His Yuan Qi surged as he retreated. Asterisk, the black demon shark seemed to have felt something. Its eyes were filled with horror, and its beast's soul trembled. Bang! Without any hesitation, Su-Yi stomped down on the head of the black demonic shark, who was at level 1 demon true realm. Crack, crack. Where Su-Yi landed, the head of the black demon black shark cracked. Cracks as thick as an arm spread across the head like a spider web before it exploded and turned into a bloody mist. Several panicked figures couldn't retreat in time and were directly blasted away. Some of them spat out blood and smashed into the water. Walala. The surrounding water began to ripple rapidly, raising huge waves that were hundreds of feet high. Ooh, the eyes of the remaining 3 black demon black sharks trembled violently. They roared and crawled, directly overturning the sea dragon gang disciple on their backs into the water. He's a tough opponent. Let's deal with him together. Huge waves surged into the sky, and a figure soared into the sky. The Yuan Qi under his feet condensed into the shadow of a flying barbaric beast and soared into the air. Oh, a figure leaped out from the water. The Yuan Qi under his feet condensed into the shadow of a barbaric beast in the water, as if he was walking on the water. One figure after another leaped out, and a fierce aura burst out. When they gathered together, it was terrifying. The surrounding water surged into huge waves, forming a frenzy. Swoosh! Su-Yi crushed the level 1 demon true realm black demon black shark with his feet. Without any delay, he leaped out again, and a huge saber appeared in his hand. Crimson fire, attributed Yuan Qi, suddenly surged around Su-Yi's body. Traces of fire, attributed Yuan Qi, that seemed to have solidified spread out from the void and instantly twined around the huge saber. Boom! Without holding back his aura, Su-Yi's level 1 Yuan true realm aura burst out. A blazing storm emerged, and the energy swept across in all directions. Although Su-Yi's injuries were severe, and he hadn't recovered much, his level 1 Yuan true realm cultivation was genuine. Mad Dragon Overlord Slash. The surrounding space instantly spread out into a small blazing storm, and a violent and sharp aura emerged from it. Without any hesitation, Su-Yi held the saber with both hands and chopped down with both arms, fiercely chopping towards the group of Sea Dragon Gang disciples in front of him. Gee, the saber light was like lightning, as if it was dragging a long red thunderbolt, and an earth-shattering crimson aura swept out. Awoo! Within the saber light, there seemed to be a vague shadow of a crimson dragon, and a violent and sharp aura exploded. Not good! Quickly disperse! Someone exclaimed, and his expression changed drastically. This kind of aura was too terrifying. Rumble, as the saber light chopped down, some of the Sea Dragon Gang disciples were directly turned into a bloody mist. Wherever the saber light passed, a crimson dragon soared into the sky, and waves surged violently. The scene was terrifying. Some experts quickly retreated, but they were also affected. More Sea Dragon Gang disciples vomited blood, and the barbaric beast shadows under their feet were shattered by the shockwave and fell into the sea. Whoosh! With Yuan Shi gushing out from the soles of his feet, He stepped on the waves and directly landed on the back of a level 2 Demon True Realm black shark that was crawling on the side. The Origin Supreme technique surged in his body, and he shouted go. Woo woo! The black shark whined and did not dare to resist. Its fierce eyes were filled with fear, and it immediately rushed out. Kill them! He shouted at the remaining 2 level 1 Demon True Realm black sharks. His eyes shone with a dazzling crimson light, and he used the Origin Supreme technique to suppress them. Woo-woo! The 2 first-level Demon True Stage Black Demon Sharks seemed to hesitate for a moment. Soon after, they let out a strange woo-woo sound. Their huge bodies stirred up huge waves, and black light filled the air. Their eyes revealed an ominous glint as they directly attacked the remaining Sea Dragon Gang disciples. What's going on? Not good. The remaining Sea Dragon Gang disciples were dumbfounded. The barbaric beast mounts that they trained had paid a huge price, but now they actually obeyed the orders of others and even attacked them. Rumble! The battle was on the verge of breaking out. Terrifying waves surged, and rays of light shot out. Terrifying energy waves swept up frenzied waves. Although there were a few Yuan True Realm experts among the remaining Sea Dragon Gang disciples, the 2 level 1 Demon True Realm Black Sharks obviously had a lot of advantages in the sea region. Woo! Under Su Yi's feet, the level 2 Demon True Realm Black Shark quickly rushed out and soon reached Ji Hanua's side. The waves fluctuated and the boat shook violently. Ji Hanua's eyes were lifeless. She saw the scene behind her with her own eyes, and her eyes were completely filled with shock. Come up quickly, He shouted, and signaled Ji Hanua to get on the back of the black shark. The speed of this level 2 Demon True Realm black shark was much faster than the speed of the boat. Coo-coo! Hearing Su Yi's words, Ji Hanua came back to her senses, and she swallowed her saliva. L% a genuine /S first issue. Chapter 880. I'm just an ordinary person, He lightly replied. As his voice faded, a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. You're injured again? Ji Hanua furrowed her brows. There was a hint of seriousness in her eyes, as well as a hint of astonishment. She knew that He was not telling the truth. Such a young man was definitely not an ordinary person. His age was similar to hers, but his strength had already reached such a terrifying level. This was too shocking. Yeah. He nodded his head. After stuffing a healing pill into his mouth, his eyes constantly looked behind, worried that the Sea Dragon Gang would catch up. Fortunately, the Sea Dragon Gang members were blocked by the Black Demon Black Shark and did not chase after them. They gradually disappeared behind them. The speed of the Black Demon Black Shark, which was at level 2 Demon True stage, was extremely fast. It broke through the surrounding waves and streaked across the surface of the sea like a water arrow. At this speed, we should be able to get out of danger soon. Seeing that He did not seem to want to say anything, Ji Hanua did not ask any further. Based on the Black Demon Black Shark speed, it would not take long for them to reach the safe zone. As long as they reached a place with many people, the Sea Dragon Gang would have some scruples and would not dare to attack them. Even if they did, the news would be sent back to the Xianjian sect. He nodded his head. His eyes were slightly solemn. He could only hope that Ji Hanua's words were true and that they would reach the safe zone soon. If they encountered a stronger Sea Dragon Gang member, Yi knew that he would not be able to stop them. Fortunately, the few waves of Sea Dragon Gang members that caught up to them were limited in terms of cultivation. Boom! Suddenly, the front trembled. It was as if a huge monster had suddenly emerged and stood above the vast waters. A mighty aura instantly spread out. Rumble! From a great distance away, a ray of Yuan energy light flashed across the sky like a thunderbolt. Then, it exploded in front of the Demon True Stage Demon Black Shark that Yi was rapidly moving before it viciously landed on the water surface. Bang, bang, bang. Immediately, the surface of the water exploded. Like a cannonball, it caused the black demon Wu Sha's body to come to a halt. Monstrous waves swept out from the front and spread in all directions. Yi's face suddenly turned serious. He secretly circulated his Yuan Qi and looked ahead through the huge waves. The waves fell like a torrential downpour. It was as if he was looking through a thick curtain of water. A huge ship stood there, like a huge demon beast in the water. On the giant ship, there were many fierce figures. Their baleful qi was shocking. Waves of strong qi rippled out. Woo-woo, the black demonic black shark whimpered and looked shocked. Not good. It's Sea Dragon Gang's deputy gang leader, Qin Jian. Ji Hanua's dignified voice was immediately heard. His face had also completely changed into a dignified expression. No wonder the Sea Dragon Gang's people who were chasing after them were slightly lacking in strength. It turned out that the true experts were already blocking the front. As the towering waves fell, the huge ship in front of Yi also appeared in front of him in a strange manner. It was like a huge monster that was standing horizontally. The ship was at least 1,000 feet long, and its entire body was engraved with beast patterns. It shone faintly, like a huge dragon emerging from the sea, and suddenly appeared in front of Yi. On the deck, there were figures standing on both sides of the ship. On the swaying ship, these figures did not move at all. The aura on their bodies was fierce. On the deck, waves of powerful qi rippled. Light surged, and a mighty aura spread out. Baleful qi filled the air. At this moment, there were many figures standing on the deck. Their clothes fluttered in the wind. Yi raised his eyes. His gaze immediately landed on a middle-aged man in his 40s on the deck. This middle-aged man was well-built. He had short black hair and wore tight clothes. His eyes were fierce and filled with light. Sea Dragon Gang's deputy gang leader. Yi frowned. With his sharp soul power, he had already sensed the qi rippling from the front. This middle-aged man was undoubtedly the Sea Dragon Gang's deputy gang leader, Qin Jian. His qi was at the Origin Void Realm. However, he should not be far from the Origin Emperor Realm. Yi frowned. His gaze was solemn. An Origin Void Realm expert that was not far from the Origin Emperor Realm. If the Green Emperor and his big brother, Merciless West, were by his side, it would naturally be fine. However, it was hard to say now. Yi did not know if the Green Emperor and his big brother, Merciless West, had awakened in the mysterious space. At the very least, he was unable to deal with such an expert at his current level. Not to mention whether he had the strength to activate the Broken Sword again. Even if he could activate it, the killing intent in the Broken Sword was not something that could be easily activated. The one at the front is the Sea Dragon Gang's deputy gang leader, Qin Jian. He is not far from the Origin Emperor Realm. Ji Hanua said. Unknowingly, she seemed to have instinctively moved closer to Yi. I knew that I would walk right into the trap. Little girl, are you going to surrender yourself, or do you want us to make you suffer? On the giant ship, a sinister voice could be heard. It was Qin Jian who spoke with a fierce expression. Qin Jian, does your Sea Dragon Gang want to be massacred? If you dare to touch me, my father and the entire Xianjian sect will definitely not let you off. At that time, they will tear you into pieces and raze your Sea Dragon Gang to the ground. Jihan Noa gritted her teeth. Her eyes were solemn, and her expression was reserved. She replied with a fierce expression. Ha ha, little girl, are you trying to threaten me? Don't talk about Xianjian's sect. If they dare to attack you, they naturally have their own plans. I'm afraid that Xianjian's sect will no longer exist in the Chaos region. Qin Jian sneered. He looked at Jihan Noa and Su Yi faintly. It seemed that the two of them were actually riding on the back of the black demonic black shark. The Sea Dragon Gang had paid a huge price to train the black demonic black shark as their mounts. Little girl, I'll give you one last chance. Surrender yourself. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Although he was confused, the most important thing now was to capture Jihan Noa from Xianjian's sect. Qin Jian did not think too much about it. He guessed that the little girl would run back to Xianjian's sect's territory as soon as possible. Relying on his advantage and speed, he had already arrived at this place in advance to wait for her. Just as he expected, the little girl had walked right into his trap. Qin Jian, don't you dare. The territory of Xianjian's sect is right in front of us. I have already informed the sect. I'm afraid that the experts of Xianjian's sect are already on their way here. Jihan Noa gritted her teeth and pretended to be relaxed. She hoped that she could intimidate the people from Sea Dragon Gang. That was the only thing she could do now. Is that so? Ha! Little girl, you are really cunning. Do you think that you can intimidate me? Chapter 881. Looking over, it was a young lady who seemed to be about the same age as Jihan Noa. Her figure was similar as well. Her hair was disheveled, and her delicate face could be vaguely seen. Yu Ting, when she saw the young lady, Jihan Noa's face turned pale, and her expression changed drastically. Qin Jian reached out his hand and lifted the young girl up by her shoulder. However, Jihan Noa sneered and said coldly, "What a good substitution. I have underestimated you, little girl. Surrender, or I will kill this lowly servant. Miss, run. Don't worry about me. Quick." The young lady with disheveled hair looked extremely weak. When she saw Jihan Noa, she did not know where the strength came from, but she immediately shouted. "Bitch, shut up." Qin Jian shouted coldly. He exerted force with his claw, and a huge force gushed out. "Ah!" the young lady screamed, and a bloody hole appeared on her shoulder. Blood flowed out, and the sound of bones being crushed could be heard. "You Ting, bastard! How dare you?" Jihan Noa shouted. "Little girl, surrender now. Otherwise, I'll kill this bitch right now." Qin Jian sneered and stared at Jihan Noa. "Miss, don't. Run. Don't be fooled. Even if you surrender, they will not let us go." The young lady screamed and shouted. "Qin Jian, if you dare to hurt her, Xianjian's sect, and you will be irreconcilable. I will definitely massacre the Sea Dragon Gang." Jihan Noa said coldly, and her beautiful face was filled with rage. "Since you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, let's get it over with." A cold glint flashed in Qin Jian's eyes as he tossed the young lady away. A powerful force surged out from his body. Boom! When the young lady was thrown out of the giant ship, her graceful body exploded in the void. She did not even have the time to scream before she turned into a bloody mist and fell onto the sea. "You Ting, no, don't." A heart-wrenching voice came out of Jihan Noa's mouth. He watched as the young girl was killed in front of him and turned into a bloody mist. Not even her corpse was left. Blood gushed out from his eyes as he finally could no longer endure. "Bastard, I'll kill you." With a heart-wrenching cry, Jihan Noa's aura surged. She clenched her 1-meter-long sword tightly and was about to jump toward the giant ship. "You're no match for him. Let's go." Su Yi pulled Jihan Noa. The yuan qi in the soles of his feet swept out, and at the same time, a scarlet light erupted from his back. A pair of scarlet wings instantly spread out, flowing with radiance, as thin as a cicada's wings. Walala! Under the extremely shocked gazes of the people on the giant ship, Su Yi's body rose up, and the surrounding waves surged. A powerful aura suddenly surged out from his body, and he directly soared into the sky and fled to the side like a bolt of lightning. That guy can actually fly. Many of the Sea Dragon Gang members on the ship were dumbfounded as they watched Su Yi soar into the sky with a flap of his wings. Jihanol was also somewhat stunned. This kind of method was definitely not common. You want to escape? Chase. With a soft exclamation, Qin Jian's cold voice suddenly sounded out. His figure immediately soared into the sky and chased after Yi Qingyu. Chase. Several figures soared into the sky, and several Yuan Void Stage experts flew out together, chasing after Su Yi. Chase. The giant ship shifted sideways and changed its direction. It chased after Su Yi in the direction that he had escaped, causing huge waves to form. The Yuan Qi wings rapidly flapped, and Su Yi used all his strength. After reaching the Yuan True stage, the speed of the third stage of the Fuyao 100 transformation steps had increased by quite a bit. Powerful aura undulated from behind, and Su Yi's expression became incomparably solemn. No matter how fast he was not as fast as Yuan Void Stage experts. You won't be able to escape if you bring me along. You and I don't know each other, and you've already helped me a lot. If you hand me over to them, you still have a 1 in 10,000 chance of escaping. Put me down. Ji Hanua's brows tightly knitted as she looked behind her. Under the pursuit of several Yuan Void Stage experts from the Sea Dragon Gang, even with such a method, Su Yi would not be able to run far and would be caught up in a moment. Do you think that I'll be able to escape if I put you down? Do your best. Su Yi replied. He was afraid that even if he handed Ji Hanua over to the Sea Dragon Gang, he would not be able to escape. He would do his best, and if it really came to a critical moment, he could only think of ways to protect himself. Your method seems pretty good, but still too weak. Qin Jian's speed was much faster than Su Yi had imagined. As the distance between them grew closer, a cold smirk spread from the corner of his mouth, and his body suddenly sped up by quite a bit. At the same time, hand seals were formed in his hands. Humph! A cold snort was emitted from his throat, and a Yuan Qi energy light pillar shot out from Qin Jian's hand and immediately headed towards Su Yi. Sensing the energy fluctuation behind him, Su Yi's expression changed drastically. He immediately dodged, and his body actually managed to escape from the energy light pillar at an unimaginable angle, causing the Yuan Qi energy light pillar to directly fall into the sea, stirring up huge waves. Qin Jian's eyes were secretly filled with astonishment. However, while Su Yi was obstructed, he had already arrived behind Su Yi. Taking advantage of the situation, a palm directly slammed down, and a wave of energy immediately gushed out. Bang! This time, Su Yi was unable to dodge even if he used all his strength. Under the huge force behind his back, he was immediately crushed, and his Yuan Qi wings were also shattered. Two figures directly fell from the sky, and 2 mouthfuls of fresh blood were spat out from their mouths at the same time. YP, 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 YP. Bang, bang, bang. 2 figures charged downwards, and coincidentally landed on an extremely small group of reefs below, causing the reefs to crack and dust to fly. Ugh! Ji Hana continuously vomited mouthfuls of blood. In front of a peak Yuan Void Stage expert who was close to the Yuan Emperor stage, he was simply unable to contend. Su Yi landed on the ground, and the blood in his body churned. He immediately stood up, and his condition seemed to be slightly better than Ji Hanua's. However, Su Yi knew that the other party wanted to keep him alive and had not used his full strength. Otherwise, the outcome could be easily imagined. TSK, TSK. 2 fellows who overestimate themselves. Especially this brat. I have underestimated you. Qin Jian's gaze landed on Su Yi, and there was some astonishment on his gloomy face. Su Yi's expression was solemn, and his mind fluctuated as he linked it with the heavenly star soul in his mind. At this moment, the only trump card he could use was the saint weapon, the heavenly star soul, which had yet to be restored. Seems like we can no longer escape. I'm sorry, I've implicated you. Ji Hanua struggled to get up and stood together with Su Yi. She looked miserable, and the corner of her mouth was dripping with blood. Her breath was weak, and on her fair face, she looked at Su-yi apologetically. She did not intend to implicate others. Su-yi smiled bitterly and felt a little comforted. From Jihan-Nua's gaze, he could feel that the apology was rather sincere. Since you refuse a toast and insist on drinking a forfeit, I'll fulfill your wish. Chapter 882. Swoosh! In the next instant, a claw print formed in Qin Jian's hand, causing the surrounding air to constrict and twist together. Dazzling primordial qi radiance surged, revealing a chilling light. It swooped down from the void and instantly crushed towards Su-yi and Jihan-Nua. The claw print was sharp and its aura was vast, enveloping the void. The crushing force caused the primordial qi in Jihan-Nua's body to stop circulating. Her face turned pale, and she did not have the strength to dodge. Buzz! The Origin Supreme technique was activated in Su-yi's body. The great void spirit sea produced the sound of wind and thunder, and the starry soul was moving in his mind. How dare you touch my daughter? You must be tired of living. I shall grant you your wish. Space trembled for no reason as a low and deep voice suddenly resounded at this critical moment. Boom! As the deep voice spread out, a vast aura also spread out from the sea region. Suddenly, the tides below rose and fell, and the waves swirled. The skies suddenly turned dark, and only a ray of green light appeared, as if the sun had descended. At this moment, Qin Jian's claw print stopped in the void for some reason. Qin Jian's cold gaze instantly turned into one of shock and horror. It was as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a heart-wrenching voice, "Sect Master Ji, this has nothing to do with me. Someone asked me to do this. Please spare my life." Spare. However, it was too late. Before Qin Jian could finish his sentence, a figure quietly appeared behind him. A claw print landed on his shoulder, and an invisible force surged out. Crack, crack. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of bones breaking was accompanied by a muffled explosion of energy. Qin Jian's body exploded in the void, and blood splattered everywhere. In the blood splattering everywhere, the suppression on Jihan-Nua's body disappeared. Her primordial qi surged and blocked the blood splattering outside. Her pale face was instantly filled with joy. She looked at the figure that suddenly appeared in the void and said to Su-yi happily, "We are safe. My father is here." Su-yi looked up, and the primordial qi in his body surged, blocking the blood splattering outside. He looked up at the void. In the green light, a slender figure appeared, and from the surrounding void, the water attribute energy of heaven and earth fluctuated, and the tides in the sea region rose and fell. This was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He had a pair of deep, dark eyes, a light blue robe, and a light golden belt around his waist. He seemed to have a cultured and refined temperament, but at this moment, the aura on his body seemed to be very sharp for no reason. His entire person emitted a kind of terrifying aura. So powerful. Su-yi could intuitively feel the aura of such a middle-aged man. He was probably slightly stronger than his brother, Merciless West. However, he seemed to be slightly weaker than the Saruga Elder and Bing Cauldron. However, Su-yi could feel the aura of a king from him. It was the unique aura of a superior. At first glance, one could tell that this person had always been in a high position and was extraordinary. Not far away in the void, several original Void Realm experts from the Sea Dragon Gang had also caught up. The giant ship in the distance was coming with huge waves. Seeing the death of Qin Jian, the Sea Dragon Gang experts who were originally overbearing with killing intent suddenly stopped in the distance. They looked at the figure that suddenly appeared, and their eyes trembled fiercely. "Oh no, it's the Xinjian sect master, Ji Qianfu. Run, run!" Someone exclaimed, and immediately jumped into the air to escape. The giant ship roared, and the figures on the deck were also shocked. They turned the ship around and wanted to escape. Still want to leave? None of you can escape." Above the void, the middle-aged man's figure instantly disappeared. Rumble. In the next moment, when a middle-aged man's figure appeared again, the sea below was surging with huge waves that were hundreds of feet high. A terrifying aura surged and spread above the sea. This was the power of the middle-aged man. Run, run. The experts from the Sea Dragon gang did not even have the heart to fight back. They were inexplicably shocked and terrified as they fled in all directions. The middle-aged man went on a killing spree. He was merciless. His figure flashed, causing the void to tremble and the sea to split open. Green light filled the sky. The water elemental energy covered half of the sky and spread out a sharp pressure. Killing intent swept across. None of the original Void Realm experts from the Sea Dragon gang managed to escape. They were directly killed, and not even their bones were left. The giant ship of the Sea Dragon gang was directly shattered. The Sea Dragon gang's disciples were killed one after another. Their blood dyed the sea red and disappeared in the torrential waves. The scene in the distance caused Sue-E to be moved. The seemingly cultured and refined middle-aged man was so ruthless and merciless when he attacked. Far away, the shadow of a ship appeared. It seemed like there were some onlookers who stopped to watch from afar and were shocked. Whoosh! The middle-aged man's figure swept across the sky and quietly landed beside Jihan Noah. His sharp and merciless aura turned into warmth and worry. He looked at Jihan Noah and carefully sized her up. Seeing that she was in good condition, he was slightly relieved. He then handed a healing elixir to his daughter and said softly, "It's good that you're fine. Quickly take it and heal your injuries." "Father, Yuting was killed by the Sea Dragon gang in order to save me." Jihan Noah took the elixir and looked at the middle-aged man in front of her. Her eyes were finally moist. "I roughly know what happened. I will deal with the Sea Dragon gang," Ji Tianfu said. He pulled up his sleeves and gently wiped the tears from the corner of his daughter's eyes. There was a faint sharpness in his eyes as he continued to say to Jihan Noah, "Fortunately, I came in time. Let's go back first." "All right, Father." His name is Sue-E. "It's all thanks to him for saving me this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to see your daughter again." Jihan Noah nodded. She then held Ji Tianfu's hand and walked towards Sue-E. She smiled at Sue-E and said, "This is my father, the Xianjian sect's patriarch. We are very safe now. I will remember my daughter's kindness for saving my life. Thank you, little brother Sue-E. Thank you very much." Looking at Sue-E, Ji Tianfu's expression was sincere and his eyes were smiling. He cupped his fist and bowed to Sue-E in a humble manner. It was hard to imagine that such a gentle and refined middle-aged man would be such a merciless killer. However, Sue-E was clear that such a person was even more difficult to deal with. This person was not old. To be able to reach such a cultivation level and become the Xinjian sect's patriarch in his 40s, it meant that he was outstanding in terms of talent, strength, and means. In a place like the Chaos region, if one's strength and means were the same, it would be difficult to achieve this. "I didn't help much. You're being too polite, Patriarch G." Chapter 883. Looking at Su Yi's response that was neither humble nor overbearing, Ji Tianfu was secretly moved. He could not help but take a few more glances at Sue-E and asked, "May I know which sect you are from?" "I don't belong to any sect. I'm just a wandering cultivator," Sue-E replied. He was still neither humble nor overbearing. He had seen plenty of experts and superiors. Hence, he was not affected by Ji Tianfu's aura. "Ha! Young hero, you're extraordinary. I'm sure you'll soar into the sky in the future." Ji Tianfu laughed and did not ask any more questions. He looked at Sue-E and handed a spatial bag to Sue-E. He then continued, "I can't repay you for saving my life. Here are some pills and spiritual herbs to express my gratitude. I hope you won't reject them." Sue-E stared at Ji Tianfu. As the sect leader of Xinjian sect, Ji Tianfu should be willing to pay a hefty price for his beloved daughter. Sue-E thought that Ji Tianfu was a free lunch. Moreover, Sue-E did put in a lot of effort and almost died. "Take it. Thank you very much this time," Jihan Noah said softly to Sue-E. She knew that if it wasn't for Su-yi, she would have fallen into the hands of the Sea Dragon Triad. Sect Leader G, you're too kind. I really didn't help much. Plus, if it wasn't for Sect Leader G, I would have died. So, there's no need for this. If it's convenient for Sect Leader G, I can trouble Sect Leader G to bring me to the shore. Sui said and did not take the spatial bag. The items in the spatial bag must be valuable. However, Sui could imagine that no matter how valuable it must have a price. Although Sui was a stingy person, he would definitely not miss out on any benefits. However, they were in the Chaos region, an unfamiliar place. Sui knew that if he took the spatial bag, he would only get some pills and spiritual herbs which would not be of much use to him. However, if he could make the Xinjiang faction's faction leader owe him a small favor, it might be of great use in the Chaos realm where he was not familiar with. Hearing this, Jihan Nua was a little surprised and her beautiful eyes rippled. Ji Tianfu's pitch-black eyes secretly rippled as his heart was filled with shock. Such a young man, in the face of the benefits he offered, was actually unmoved. From Suyi's eyes, Ji Tianfu could clearly see that there was no fluctuation in them. This was enough to prove that the young fellow did not care about the pills and spiritual medicines inside the interspatial bag at all. Hence, he was not moved at all without even looking at them. In front of him, Su-yi was neither servile nor overbearing. How could such a young man be a simple character? Then I won't force you, little brother. This place is not far from land, so it's only right to bring you along. Then, I'll have to trouble you, little brother. Ji Tianfu didn't insist. He smiled faintly, his expression unchanging. Immediately after, Ji Tianfu took Su-yi and Jihan Nua and left. Air currents whistled on both sides as they crossed the sea. Our latest update. Fast up equals VP 0 gradually. The silhouettes of boats could be seen below. Soon, there was a huge port and a vast piece of land was revealed above the sea. In a mountain range where there were few people, 3 figures descended from the sky. They were Ji Tianfu, Jihan Nua, and Su-yi. Su-yi looked around and saw that they were already ashore. In front of them was a mountain range. Little brother Su-yi, not far from here is one of the halls of Xinjiang sect. I can see that your injuries are not light. If you don't mind, you can stay in Xinjiang sect for a while. It'll be convenient for you to heal your injuries and allow me to be a good host. Ji Tianfu said to Su-yi. He could feel that Su-yi's injuries were not light. I won't trouble you, Sect Leader G. I'm used to being alone. Thank you, Sect Leader G. Goodbye. Su-yi thanked him. It would be inconvenient for him to heal his injuries in Xinjiang sect. After finishing his words, he turned around and left. Hey! Seeing that Su-yi was about to leave, Jihan anxiously called out to Su-yi. She then felt that it was a bit abrupt. Her expression gradually changed, and she asked, Where are you going? I don't know. Miss Hanua, goodbye. We'll meet again if fate wills it. Su-yi stopped and turned around to say to Jihan Nua. He had a good impression of her. Judging from her expression when her maid was killed, she was truly heartbroken. However, it was a pity that he couldn't save the maid. This made Su-yi feel a little sad. Su-yi was touched by the fact that the maid was willing to die for her mistress. Such a maid shouldn't have died, but he couldn't help her. All right then, Jihan Nua said. There was a tinge of loneliness in her eyes. Ji Tianfu saw this, and his expression didn't change. He looked at his beloved daughter and threw an item to Su-yi. He said to Su-yi, Little brother Su-yi, this is the token of Xinjiang sect. If you need my help in the future, as long as Xinjiang sect and I can do it, I won't reject you. Su-yi raised his hand and took the item. It was a sword-shaped token that was half a foot long. He kept it and smiled. Then, he bid farewell and left. Yuan Qi flashed under his feet, and his figure disappeared into the mountain range. Looking at the direction where Su-yi disappeared, Jihan Nua's eyes were filled with emotions. A young man like him gave her a unique feeling. It was as if he had left something in her heart. However, it was hard to understand. This Su-yi is not simple. He's very special. There aren't many people who can attract my daughter's attention. Ji Tianfu said with a smile as he looked at his beloved daughter. Ji Hanua came back to her senses, and her cheeks blushed. She then looked serious and said to Ji Tianfu, "Father, the Sea Dragon Gang attacked me when I went to the Divine Dragon Sea area. It seems like there's someone behind the scenes who wants to deal with Xinjian sect. Not many people know that I went out to sea. There must be a spy in Xinjian sect. The Sea Dragon Gang is backed by the Green Sanctuary sect. They could no longer hold themselves back and started to take action. However, they did not expect the Green Sanctuary sect to escape from the eyes and ears of the Xinjian sect. They secretly asked the Sea Dragon Gang to deal with you and wanted to use you to threaten me. Something big almost happened. Fortunately, it was not dangerous. Otherwise, I would not be able to live in peace. We have to go back immediately. This time, it is time for the Green Sanctuary sect to pay the price." Yuan Shi flowed under his feet, and Su Yi entered the mountains. His injuries had yet to recover. After running for several times, he was injured again. Su Yi's situation was not good. He urgently needed to heal himself. Chapter 884. Within the mountain range, there are traces of demonic beasts. According to Su Yi's understanding, there were very few people around. Steep cliffs, strange rocks, and narrow natural cracks that could barely allow one person to pass through. There was a small natural cave. Inside the cave, Su Yi moved rocks to seal the door. After setting up some small traps, he called out the mysterious space. "Lord!" The Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon and Wolf Head Demonic Bat immediately came to Su Yi's side. Before the Sacred Martial Assembly started, Su Yi had the Wolf Head Demonic Bat and Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon enter the mysterious space to prevent his identity from being exposed. Not long ago, when Su Yi brought the Green Emperor and Merciless West into the mysterious space, the Wolf Head Demonic Bat and Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon were both breaking through. Therefore, Su Yi did not disturb them. Before the Sacred Martial Assembly, the Wolf Head Demonic Bat's cultivation was at the peak of the 8th level of the Demon Spirit Realm. At this moment, the Wolf Head Demonic Bat's aura had already stepped into the 1st level of the Demon True Realm. The Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon cultivation had also increased by a lot. They've woken up and are healing their injuries. The Blood Jasper Ginseng also came to Su Yi's side and informed Su Yi that the Green Emperor and Merciless West had woken up and were healing their injuries. Su Yi's gaze immediately fell on Merciless West and Green Emperor. At this moment, the Green Emperor and Merciless West had already woken up and were sitting cross-legged not far away. Their bodies were wrapped in light, and their breathing was emitting light. They were healing their injuries. Seeing that Merciless West and Green Emperor had both woken up, Su Yi was completely relieved. Su Yi then looked over and saw Su Xiaoshui was also healing his injuries. His body was wrapped in flames, and the scorching aura could make one's soul feel like it was on fire. "Protect me. I need some time to heal my injuries," Su Yi said to the Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon and the Wolf-Headed Demon Bat. After all, this was an unfamiliar place. Su Yi wanted to recover from his injuries as soon as possible. Healing in the mysterious space would be a lot faster. Although he had set up some small traps outside, with the protection of the Xianyang Golden Demon Falcon and the Wolf-Headed Demon Bat, he still had to be at ease. After letting the Wolf-Headed Demonic Bat and Xianyang Golden Demonic Falcon go out to guard, Su Yi also found a place to sit cross-legged in the mysterious space. After continuing to take some spiritual liquid, he condensed a hand sign and began to heal. This time, Su Yi's injuries were really not light. His old injuries had not healed, and then he was chased by the Sea Dragon Gang. His injuries were even more serious. Su Yi closed his eyes. Crimson light fluctuated around his body as he revolved the Primordius Supreme Art. A dignified aura of annihilation spread out. Within this small mountain cave, a couple of figures were immersed in healing their injuries. Zhongzhou. As time passed, the frenzy of searching for the Overlord Su Yi seemed to have subsided a little. After all, everyone's enthusiasm was limited. The Sacred Mountain's reward made people excited, but there was no trace of Su-yi. There was no way to continue the search. Of course, there were also people who did not give up and were still searching everywhere. Especially the 1,000 miles around Zhongzhou City. It was bustling with excitement. Everyone thought that the overlord Su-yi could not have escaped far and would be within 1,000 miles of Zhongzhou City. There was no news of Su-yi. Some people guessed that the overlord Su-yi, Su-chun, and the other heaven's prides had died in the spatial crack. Some people also said that the overlord Su-yi and the others had escaped and successfully hid. This was because, with their terrifying talents, if they were to appear in the Central Plains again, they would become a terrifying force. At that time, even the Sacred Mountain would have a headache and be difficult to deal with. The continuous mountain range converged into a great mountain. The continuous mountain range was filled with heaven and earth energy. Clouds and mist churned, mountain streams flowed, and waterfalls 1,000 feet high cascaded down 1,000 feet high cliff. Rare birds and strange beasts, strange flowers and grass, towering ancient trees, and spiritual herbs were everywhere. The towering mountain range was filled with wind and rain and lightning. Not far away, there was a whistling wind of frost and ice. This world was like a fairyland, vast and boundless. This was the Sacred Mountain, the holy land of all the cultivators in Zhongzhou. Everyone hoped that one day they could set foot here to cultivate. Everyone knew that any disciple who walked out of the Sacred Mountain was a powerhouse. Once they entered the Sacred Mountain, it meant that they would be a giant in the future, able to move unhindered. As disciples of the Sacred Mountain, everyone was proud and arrogant. They never put their peers outside of the Sacred Mountain in their eyes. They did not even care about the disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions. Only the top disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions would be worthy of their attention. They did have this qualification. Being able to enter the Sacred Mountain was already a representation of their potential and talent. However, everything that happened in the Sacred Martial Assembly recently, Mo Beiming and Chu Zhanghuan were killed, dozens of direct disciples of the Sacred Mountain were killed, and Holy Sun Naren Ryu was seriously injured to the extreme and almost died. All of this was done by the Overlord Su-yi alone. When the news spread, the entire Sacred Mountain was shocked. For the disciples of the Sacred Mountain, none of them were willing to believe that everything that happened in the Sacred Martial Assembly was true. But in front of the truth, all the disciples of the Sacred Mountain had no choice but to believe everything that happened. They had always been high and mighty, so there was no way they could accept such a result. It was hard to imagine that there was a peer who could be so terrifyingly strong. It was said that this matter also shocked the upper echelons of the Sacred Mountain. Some high-level powerhouses personally asked Wang Chuanda. In the end, when a disciple of the Sacred Mountain saw Wang Chuanda, it seemed that his face was full of palm prints, red and swollen like a pig's head. I heard that Su-yi was also a disciple of our Sacred Mountain. When Wang Chuanda returned, Su-yi was already dead. But for some reason, Su-yi went to the Xinjiang Gate later. This time, he had such a fierce performance in the Sacred Martial Assembly and killed so many disciples of our Sacred Mountain. It's very likely that it has something to do with Wang Chuanda. Some people were discussing. This matter was no longer a secret in the Sacred Mountain. Su-yi was originally a disciple of the Sacred Mountain, but in the end, he hated the Sacred Mountain so much that he killed so many disciples of the Sacred Mountain. It was naturally related to Wang Chuanda. Wang Chuanda has a great backer behind him. If he didn't have a great backer, he would have been directly punished for missing such a talented disciple. Some disciples whispered, Su-yi's talent was too terrifying. He should have been a disciple of the Sacred Mountain. But in the end, he became the enemy of the Sacred Mountain and killed so many disciples of the Sacred Mountain. If he was an ordinary overlord, he would have been directly executed. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.